in that way. It's a relatively neutral position, not very active, and Maestro get to keep tabs on them, but I'm not expecting a whole lot of action even between these two squads that are so close together.
No, typically what usually happens, especially from the orientation of Passion, is while they could try to assault that with whatever ultimates they do find themselves sitting upon, you do kind of have that far western pull through the ocean that you are allowed to try to play through, albeit it is usually covered by height. So we look towards, most notably, Kellic Gaming when we start to discuss this one out. We hop on with the Fire Beavers, haven't moved on from Mill yet, more than happy to take advantage of this replicator they know they have to themselves.
There's plenty of space for them to work with here as well, given how Joker is using these smokes, making sure that not only can nobody see them, but actually actively obscuring sightlines on the low ground. Taskmaster does spot perhaps a little bit of action out towards the southeastern side, however, and Fire Beavers, with now two teams starting to come up on them, could consider a move really quickly. Alliance also waiting here, and Alliance, my team to watch, could very well start an explosive fight with just an opening frag from Effect. So we gotta be careful as these two teams, though far apart, are on the verge of fighting.
It's tough to really kind of decipher what that next step is for either Alliance or Fire Beavers. Alliance already, well, yes, hosting a spot into this next zone. You start discussing how are they going to find their way forward when we get into that kind of southern open area that exists just below the down beast here. You have a little bit of that bridge play and some of those rocky exposures, but I'm willing to bet you if we don't see redeploys from Taskmaster and the like, it will be a contested movement.
Both Taskmaster, the entirety of Fire Beavers, and Alliance would really like access to the survey beacon right next to them as well, because both these teams know that they're going to have to move into the zone. It's just a matter of time, and in all likelihood, we'll get to see them do so in the next couple of minutes. Meanwhile, however, J-Lings, an early rotator, has set up a lot of space to control with these Watson fences, and are doing so really well, especially considering that they're operating off low ground.
Fantastic, and it's not just a low ground now. They cater to that kind of mid area that allows them to assault not just this platform back here, but also gatekeep anyone who's still playing the likes of those kind of back end villages on the west side of the downed beast here. And because they are able to do so, they don't allow anyone to take high ground position on the beast itself and start to find some of those damaging angles that could punish them. I absolutely love that spot, getting that overhead view. That is something that will pay dividends when we get to the end game.
I'm hoping so. Aurora right next to them have to be concerned as well, since they're being slowly encroached on by the zone. They know it's probably not where the ring is ending, but this fight that was a long time coming seems to be breaking out as Pioneers just suddenly go down. We tune in with them, and it looks like E6 made use of the Stinky Grandpa, and now have to pull this out again as Kinda goes down.
And we talk about this contest we knew was gonna happen from the very get-go here. This building more than available for Alliance. Fire Beavers want their piece of the pie too. Obviously, no major cracks, no huge damage found as of yet, but a position of safety.
Taskmaster on the roof means that you're in trouble. Fire Beavers aren't letting you go anymore. They give you so many opportunities to disengage, and now Alliance have to fight back. It's going to be a slow one as we wait for Oirain to finally whip out the ult. Impulse goes up the stairs and gets fried, but he trades, and Hackis falls as well. Oirain picks up the last kill, and Alliance bite the dust, but it's just as Bitfix Gaming come up. Horizon up to the roof, and in comes the third party. Can Fire Beavers reset in time? Interrupt doesn't go down, and the gold knockdown shield is out. Bitfix are on height, but Fire Beavers wide swing and almost take down Cracked.
Cracked here on his debuts, gotta make it count. Already though, this roster down in full flesh, forced to stick the batteries. What could have been the perfect timing on that revive assault is now equalized. And hey, Fire Beavers are already taking height back outside.
They're ready to take this engagement fully. Taskmaster again, almost full HP, is already sieging down, but yet another team has joined the fray. We had so many southeastern rotations early, Zephyr, and we're seeing them all come to a head right around Mill. Fire Beavers have to know that this is not the end of the road. It's time to bunker down. Unfortunately, they've got the loot boxes to do so because that fight with Alliance was at the perfect time.
A little bit of an arc start stuck on the back end there, but it is nothing in the face of cleaning up BitFix Gaming. Helped out in part by Dynasty there. They're going to award themselves at least 2 of that KP. Across from them, V2, they want to challenge the monsters once again. I promise you, V2, this doesn't go well.
This is not what you thought you were walking into, but Izadin does get some good damage down initially. YOLO's got to disengage off the height, and again, V2, like so many squads that have fallen before them, find themselves on the low ground, find themselves without tempo up against Fire Beavers, and now they're eating shots from other squads around them. Quick reload, quick bat, hopefully quick disengage, because V2 can't stick around, and they're gonna try and play GTA and get the heck out of here as Fire Beavers rotate right past them, knowing that they have an opportunity to strike on the Trident.
But we talked about it early on, this rotation, a movement forward, something that needed to be planned. All of these contests, all of these fights finally come and pay their price. V2 with the heavy movement forward, hops out of the Trident and finds damage where it counts, sending Fire Beavers home in 17.
Oh god, though, this is so late. Izadin's already being shot at in the Trident. YOLO might not make it into the zone. 1 tick more, and he survives, moving down into the choke point that separates Downed Beast and Checkpoint. V2 managed to survive, albeit down a member, but they sacrificed it for a good cause. Finally, somebody's taking Fire Beavers out of the lobby. Meanwhile, Game & Gladiators swing onto the low ground. They got their own fight going on up against the Heroes, and again, this southeastern rotation claims another life. Heroes go down.
Heroes wiped out in full, and now their sights targeted to that low ground. We know for a fact that just below them lies an easy 2v3 situation. Liagri, of course, on this Seer should be able to sniff that one out or sense out some hearts.
We've finally made it into this third ring fully closed, and I'm surprised, Zephyr, that there are only 13 squads left. It was a massive culling for a zone that so many predicted correctly, but the way that these teams rotated, the fact that these two sides of the lobby have not played against each other in so long, groups B versus C, clearly unused to each other in the early stages of today, have honestly managed to put themselves in a position where there's a lot of open space in the end game because so many people are dead.
There might be some open space still left available in the Down Beast itself, but it's seconds away from that potentially being irrelevant here. So many of these teams have to give up the low ground, the buildings, and have to play directly, of course, for that beast themselves. This rotation for Game & Gladiators is as bad as it gets, but it comes with the reward of finding YOLO at least. A bit of an interceptor pylon in play with 14 to go. How do they make it across?
Looks like Game & Gladiators may very well be able to walk this in. They've even got a care package ahead of them, completely unlooted, but they're starting to attract attention. Height on Downed Beast. If we'll remember, Kella Gaming, most recently holding that position, have noticed what lies ahead of them.
Oh my.
Game & Gladiators are going to try and whip out the Valkyrie ultimate. They'll make it up to the sky after taking a peppering of damage from those missiles, and we'll see where they land as those missiles. We'll see where they land. Spots available, and this is what they're going for, right into a smoke, right into the unknown. And like Elsa, they seem to have baited out okay. A little bit of an arc star, a little bit of a skirmish, but Game & Gladiators are stabilizing, even getting aggressive as they whip out the Seer ult from Laugry, and now start to fry. Digi threats in hand, cars out, 2 knocks down, and Game & Gladiators are 1 knock away. They are no knocks away from taking out Aurora. Now though, with Artico suffering some damage, he gets out but barely. Laugry gets full thirsted, and Game & Gladiators now are on the back foot, now being pushed by Horizon.
Horizon are more than happy that they take out Vortex for them. It allows space to open up here, but it doesn't come without the price of Phoenix as well. V2 going out here in 10th, just behind them. Horizon are now finally, I think, in the safest position to reset and find full health now that they've been granted an exit out of the Beast.
So many quick fights happening in that short span of time over by just the corner. And honestly, it opened up that third-party scenario in a way that neither team was expecting. Neither Aurora or Game and Gladiators thought that they would be in trouble in their respective spots, but very quickly discover the opposite. We drop down to 8 squads. Again, a continually bloody game, Zephyr. Passion managing to retain some height for now. Not ultimate height in Downed Beast, but this next pull changes everything.
Once again, this tail no longer in play, more directly towards that platform that Jaylings came through with, but Passion, they hold hands with Maestro all game long, but finally the fangs come out. Horizon Low dropped at the hands of Tax, a return from 0-0 may not be imminent, but they themselves actually in a 2v2. Tax, though, with an immediate swap, leaving it to Zanya to at least secure that next kill there, but Element 6, here they come.
And Tax saw this earlier. He knew the third party was incoming. E6 unable to capitalize on the height, now get pushed themselves. And it may just be their end as there's so much flesh around them. E6 do go down, and Horizon are the ones to do it to them. Another successful third party from this squad, but they've got no time to celebrate because the zone is closing in, pushing them out into the open, into the former position of Jaylings. Let's see if they're still there.
Jaylings, obviously, with the first take on this platform, are nowhere to be seen, potentially out-positioning towards the edge there. Instead, they've pulled back to the very cusp of this foot. They know they don't have the loss on those fence lines just yet, and they're more than happy to wait out the onslaught that comes through from that beast itself.
This Catalyst wall, not going to do a whole lot, is out there. Jaylings don't even have to worry about it. So many people are funneling out into the open, and Jaylings get to farm. Maestro go down, Danish go down, Horizon Union are out, and we're into the top 3 just like that, Zephyr. This is going to be an end game where Jaylings, unfortunately, find themselves sandwiched, but they've done so well until now.
This is a team that we know can make it happen when it comes to this lobby. They won it last time around, and they're poised to do it again. An off angle by Nags here already secures massive damage from above onto Phoenix Legacy. He does have to bide his time, but that is major resources expended.
No climb up available. Phoenix Legacy just bunkering down in the middle of this, and you can't help but feel bad for them as Kella from the top of Down Beast, from the top of Challenger Circuit, now start to push up. Ring starting to close. This is do or die for Kella, for Phoenix Legacy, for Jaylings. Who's going to come out on top? Can Kella finally do it?
It's tough to say here for Kella. They have one of the better positions. We talk about the rotation towards that pole. Both Jaylings and, of course, Phoenix Legacy will be forced out from their back-end position in just a moment's notice. And look at Odie with this absolute supreme high ground to work with.
Making really good use of it so far. Juso backing him up. Another DG threat, another Bangalore, and another situation where you simply cannot fire back. Phoenix Legacy go down, and Odie Price! That's gotta be the drop for Kella Gaming! And in they come. Nags bites the dust. Noises go down. There's one member left, and it's Odie and Juso versus the world as they pick up this final kill. The Prowler does it in for him, and Kella Gaming from the Challenger Circuit pick up their win in Week 7.
Kella Gaming from early on, a deep rotation in from North Pad, steal that one away from even the likes of Aurora, who quite literally land in the down beast, play from that height, time the rotation in his own way, take away Jayling's platform, and then win it all.
And Aurora got psyched out. We talked about this earlier, but as the zone starts to encroach on the platforms behind Down Beast, they give it up. They go into the opposite side where teams like E6 and Pioneers fell before them. Horizon cleaning up so much of that side of the lobby, Zephyr.
Well, we'll have to see how it poses them, especially in regards to the points overall. Let's bring back Tiff in here. What an incredible start to the day of B versus C.
A definite incredible start. Congratulations to Kella Gaming for taking that map 1 victory with Esteemed. As soon as I saw them take that ultimate high ground, I was like, this is their game to win if they fumble this. But they get that opening knock onto Nags from Jaylings and then follow it up with another one. I was like, this is clean. That was incredibly well played. So thanks for calling all the action. So hype, guys. It was good.
I mean, our jobs are easy when the games are this good. I'm gonna say that when the shots are so clean, getting excited, celebrating what these players are able to achieve, it comes so naturally. And watching Kella succeed was really incredible, right alongside Phoenix Legacy, who very much need good games today.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull up some of those highlights so we can start. I don't want to cut you off there, Zephyr, but I do want to go through some of those highlights because, you know, we've been spoiled with some really solid Apex action as of late, starting with that Charity Pro-Am just a few days ago. We had some really strong moves. In particular, it was Hardeki that stood out a lot. I was constantly watching the gameplay and I was like, dude, this man is on one. And I was really curious to see how that performance would carry the momentum here today, starting in match day number 7. And we did get a lot of early action, in particular with the Fire Beavers Dia, but then that's when we saw GG start picking things up.
Yeah, it was such an unexpected moment where things switched up as V2 took that rotation ahead of Fire Beavers and very quickly took a whole squad out of the lobby, the squad that had been running it up until then. And after that, it was team after team trying to rotate into and through Down to Beast, specifically this little tail portion that you called out in the early game, Zephyr. So many squads fell on the way through, not knowing how they wanted to handle this transition into the outer part of Down to Beast.
I think it's the hardest part of Down Beast to play. We talk about anything on that west side. You have some of those buildings in the back, and of course, like I've said many times, the carcass, right? To actually work with as a position to move through, and none of that was available. It's some of our most early rotators that find their success here, notably Jaylings, albeit in second there, and Phoenix Legacy, and of course, Kella from Northpad, who come out on the top of the day.
Really solid performance there from Jaylings. I mean, you look at Stormpoint alone, they do typically have more kills or more points from placement, so really strong showing for them. But Kella as well, taking a solid there. They had 6 eliminations, but jumping down to the 11th through 20th place. This is where things are getting a little like interesting, right? You mentioned Aurora, their drop spot is the Down Beast, and they got evicted early on and were only able to pick up 1 KP from that. And you just start to look, Fire Beavers, sure, they went out in 17th place, but they had 5 eliminations. Had V2 not cut off their rotation, they were poised to continue on the domination. And it's just been really, really exciting. We'll kind of see how that goes forward. But here's the deal, Dia. You know, you did really, really solid casting that map 1, but we're going to throw you into the void. We're going to kick you out just for a little bit because I believe Zephyr and I are going to be like going through the action there on match number 2. But I'm sorry. You know, you did a really good job. But we are going to cut to a quick break. And when we come back, it's probably going to be me and Zephyr. So bye, Dia. Go grab yourself some water, chat, because things are about to get hot.
WD Black, the official storage partner of the Apex Legends Global Series.
Welcome back to the Apex Legends Global Series. Welcome back to the Zephyr here to call all the action for match number 2 while Dia takes a short little rest before coming back for match number 3. But seriously, you guys did a solid job bringing all that action, and congratulations to Kella Gaming for withstanding one of the hardest positions in Down Beast to play.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope these teams are appreciating their starting success even more here. I want to highlight it just because I think it's so absurd. I don't want to walk away from it. Phoenix Legacy, props to them. Get absolutely pushed out of their POI. No time to loot. Come all the way back in and finish top 3 nonetheless from not even a Valkyrie deploy, not even a fast rotation. Literally have to walk it in.
Yeah, it's really tough, right? And they've kind of been struggling and trying to figure out like who is going to be their trio, right? We've seen them testing a lot of different players today. They've got Imp back on the team. They had Peerless Peanut in I believe the last competition I had witnessed out of them. So they've been kind of trialing a third, and they're trying to figure out what's going to happen. But I feel like they've still been relatively consistent, but they're not going to be able to reach their final form until they get that trio solidified. And I love that you bring that up because we were looking at like scrims. So, well, granted, scrims are few and far between these days, but historically during this specific matchup, Jaylings does kind of encroach on that checkpoint drop spot in Stormpoint. So it's relatively tough for them because they are a fast rotating team. They want to make sure that they can get that ring console information and then hit the ground running per Sabs' request. But looks like match number 2 is about to be underway, Zephyr. And the action was pretty cracked for map number 1. I'm not going to lie. And I really hope it holds true here for match number 2.
I don't know if it was cracked, I don't know if it was the Down Beast, or if it was just Fire Beavers, especially starting off the game with a bang. Nonetheless here, a nice little reset for our teams and a zone that caters completely opposite of what we just saw.
Hey, I mean, it could be, but we're getting another North Zone. Look, was it in the Pro-Am that just recently happened where everything was pulling south and it was just launch pad after launch pad after launch pad? So I'm not sure what's happening here, but whoever's giving us these northern zones, thank you so much, because this is going to be all in Alliance's favor. And Horizon, they're not going to have to completely go from east to west on that rotation. They can kind of sit just where they are, and you'll start to notice. But think of the Fire Beavers, right? They're that edge hitting zone team, right? This is going to be exactly what they want.
Right, it's funny you say that. You're usually of the mindset where you're like, oh, come on, guys. You know, a catered rotation that's much longer would usually be super punishing for any kind of team. And it usually is. Dia was bringing up some incredible data earlier on, and I want to kind of retouch on it. Fire Beavers, in the zone itself, have the highest ring damage taken out of any other squad out there at 19,000. 5 digits. Of every other team, there are only 4 teams that come close at 5-digit numbers, respectively being that of SPS, Dynasty, and FUT, and they don't even come close to a position on the board that rivals these guys.
Yeah, he was talking more in particular about the revives given. 29 different revives for the Fire Beavers team, and it was because they are outside that zone, potentially getting knocked to Storm. But the issue is here, with playing that edge, you run the risk of the team rotating earlier, similar to what we saw in map number 1, and just kind of holding them out. I feel like if Fire Beavers had just a little bit more time in that, because you saw at one point one of the Fire Beavers members had switched over to a white shield last minute to kind of carry on that rotation. So a little bit of a disadvantage there. But as we start to look at some rotations early on in particular, you have to think of where you're able to get the ring console, where you can get that map scan to have the information of not only if you are going to play outside the zone, it's what's available, right? And those, by the time that you've made your way into the next zone, that data that you got from the map room scan is so outdated. But Maestro getting started a little bit early here.
We talk about Nightmare, who typically lands here in High Point, and already delivering to Maestro find a double knock in the moment. One final member to set themselves below, and they don't even care. They're more than happy to pull for full thirst while they have the chance. A bat or two picked with an exhibit down guarantees the end of our 3v1.
And this is a really important fight. Let's talk about that for a second, because establishing your space here in High Point early, any team that decides to maybe rotate out through the wall is going to have to push through this choke point. And you've already got the kind of buildings and the space taken, but Horizon Union would love to bring this up to full screen because there is some action happening and I need more of it. I need me to be full screened into this, Zephyr.
It does look like when it comes to the Catalyst, they had to use that Dark Veil to at least secure a bit of an edge on that well, revive for Urban. They did secure double knocks down, albeit weren't able to finish that one in the end here. I'm curious where that exactly comes through. We know for a fact some of these other squads are beginning to arrive. Maestro and Nightmare at the start of that fight. Okay, it looks like they themselves were able to recover, weren't third-partied by Horizon. Instead, it's Nightmare that gets forced out of this building.
And I think that's a strong, right? This is totally able to be shared splitly, right? They can cohabitate this building. You can essentially poke throughout and maybe get some damage, maybe level up your shields. You're sitting on triple blue for Horizon. But for the most part, this is a fight that doesn't necessarily need to happen yet. They can live here, gatekeep the rotation, and just hold their position steady. I think that's smart. Establishing this position early. Maestro, I mean, we saw a lot of good moments from them on their very first match day, and I was really impressed with the trio. And now I'm excited to see, can they keep that up going there forward? And let's take a look with Dynasty. You know, at one point they were playing in the Challenger circuit in those Pro League season qualifiers back under the name of Rats, I believe. So
yes,
good to see, but we're talking about things like relegation and being sent back to those qualifiers, and this is a time where you do not want to let that happen.
Meanwhile, up here, once again, back towards High Point, Passion, the previously oriented Horizon team, have found their way directly upon the same building as their bread. It does seem like it forces Horizon now down into only having that first floor available. And this is something that you are going to constantly see here in this zone in particular. When we talk about playable space for this current poll, notice so much of the command center and the caves are available. And nobody is likely to play those at all unless you are a deep rotating squad. Why? Well, zone can't end there. It is guaranteed that we do not see a finish. Right now, every single squad who either has one of those control ring consoles or potentially just that early knowledge knows for a fact that there are only 2 playable endgame spots available, outside of Thunderwatch and here in these buildings.
Yeah, it's going to be really challenging because you think if it does pull a little north towards the High Point area where a lot of our teams, you can see in that lower mini map on the upper left-hand corner, they are pulling and betting that it is going to go towards High Point. So think of the rotation. Teams like Gaming Gladiators, they're currently occupying Thunderwatch. And you think of Endgame, you have to push out of Thunderwatch into an open area where everyone's just going to be breathing down your necks, looking to completely pick you off one by one. So love what Horizon, Union, and Maestro are doing here, just kind of setting themselves up for success, reinforcing the door, using the piercing spikes now. If the door does decide to get shut down, oh, here we go. A nice little seer exhibit coming out, and they're going to make a push for the other side of the building. Nothing like a little bullying. I like it.
This is just prime real estate for Horizon to capitalize on here. The window, a prime viewing orientation for themselves. Peek through the other side, and it doesn't even feel like Passion put up anything. I think quite literally only 50 damage on Jay Savage there.
I mean, yeah, that was a really well executed fight. Urban just going through the window, immediately getting a shield crack. That was so efficient and just honestly one of the best fights I've seen at the hands of Horizon. So let's check in with Kella Gaming, your map 1 winners. They're at the wall right now. So think about a rotation coming out of this POI. Like you talked about it, you can go through command center eventually. That's kind of going to be a very tough rotation in my aspect. You go up those incredible long zip lines and you try to pop out north. That choke point through spiders is disgusting to try and push through, especially late game. So I just don't think that is going to be the way to go. They seem as if they're kind of encroaching up towards maybe the caves, and I think that would be a better move for them. This is technically where Element 6 had rotated through way earlier on, like I'm talking minutes ago.
Yes, at the very beginning of the game, how they found their way directly to the height here of, well, High Point itself. Well, now, when it comes to this zone rotation, I am going to continue to pick on it. When it comes to the cave system and that zip line you bring up towards the north side, it is guaranteed that we see the highest presence of teams directly well within that high point. And granted, while we do think the zone is ending there, I want to remind some people of maybe something they don't remember. I believe it was day 2 Storm Point, we see a similar finish here. And while yes, High Point, those buildings that we currently see Horizon and Maestro were in play, the zone pulled a little bit further back, just slightly leaving some some of that open-ended area back towards that Prowler nest and the height that comes down from the command center exit. And notably, our teams who didn't bet on the high point, who didn't have to worry about the density of squads, actually survived longer, given that they weren't in that much of, well, we'll say dire straits.
Speaking of dire straits, let's cut into Heroes right now. Phoenix Legacy has not made their rotation into High Point. They're still in Command Center alongside Heroes, and you've got Babylons right now just waiting to throw out the Black Hole, but Enforced is going to take down a little bit of damage, not going to magnitude into a shield crack, but the Black Hole can totally break through the door, and some good Thermite nades going out, but not really amounting to much damage here just yet.
Constantly pulling away further and further. They expend so many of the heroes' cooldowns, albeit giving up constant space. Likely could be pushed out towards back outside. Granted, right now, Heroes just holding the corner, not quite looking for any assault, especially now knowing that they no longer have those ultimates available.
I mean, Heroes just running such a more aggressive Legend composition here, which allows them to kind of push forward and bully Phoenix Legacy out of their space and constantly force them to move back. You know, they have that Watson, and typically they're the team that's going to be playing Crypto as well. And you think about things like that. They're actually not playing Crypto today, which I really respect them for not doing the Crypto Watson. But the Watson is going to just keep pushing further back, fencing up, and just want to pull Heroes maybe into a situation that could benefit Phoenix Legacy a little more. But I just think it's too early on for them to necessarily fight. It's not going to amount to anything at that point, but you want to make sure that you're getting some of those placement points. But I'm just shocked that Phoenix Legacy is still in Command Center.
Especially as a team that has one of the fastest looting times in the game. They typically average somewhere around a minute to a minute and 15. They got out of checkpoint, but didn't quite cater to the region immediately. Now, granted, we look towards this particular building setup. Jailings have arrived. They are once again one of those rosters that currently sits in our top 5 on the overall, alongside Horizon Union, laying just across from them. I'm beginning to see some patterns on the day of.
Yeah, last time we checked in with Jailings, you know, they've just made their way into a building. Let's jump into a listen-in to hear if they're going to talk about maybe their next movements forward. That listen-in is going to be presented by WD Black.
I reckon. Yeah, Jen in his corner.
Yeah, we're literally in endgame. We are in endgame, okay? We just can't. I think you're good.
Wait, I think we triple play here. I think we triple play here.
Really good here, Jay. On me.
Are you sure?
I think
yeah,
so.
I was just saying because 3
The door?
teams can see the doors, you know. Whereas if I put it here,
But then they can nade and take the stairs from us. You know what I mean? I don't know. If you gen here, they can't take the space from us. Who can see the gen? Who can see the gen? This team out here.
this door gets
Max,
one
what are you doing, bro?
on one. I'm putting a gen here on you.
Don't do that shit, Nax.
Yeah.
If you get knocked there, we just lost this game. Just lock it in. Do you guys have nades?
You have a med kit or no?
Yes,
Gen needs.
No, zero med kit.
No, zero
Don't
med
have
kit.
nades.
Yeah,
Syringe?
syringe. Yeah, I'll take it.
Is that armor stock fresh or what?
No, it's not. We can make it fresh though. I got 16
yeah,
cells.
do it.
Well, I'm gonna slow here first. The armor salt.
Right, listen, boys. When you're full HP now, sit on me and play on me, alright? No, Jay, play on me because you can fence the
No,
stairs.
look at my HP, dude.
Okay.
You want me to slow heal this? No. No, I can do it.
No, just pop a cell. It's not worth it. We're not going to take any damage anyway. We're not peeking anyone. It's more important we have presence here, and I want you on me, Jay, so you can spam fence the stairs if you need to, okay?
Oh wait, you have the gen as well.
I know, exactly. It's not a bad spot, dude, but we cannot give up this space, and then they just swing and kill us.
Yeah.
And Nags, you need to play there, because they might drop out balcony and try and make a play on you, okay? And you need to be ready to swing that guy and one clip when he flies back out, okay?
No, they're gonna get.
Well, that was definitely very interesting, but it's always good to hear, especially when a team has poised themselves in prime positioning for that end game, and that's what Jailings is focusing on. And the dynamics between Nags and Co, it's quite interesting, right? Nags, kind of that entry fragger, poking the stairs, trying to just do poke damage, and you just hear him, don't do that. Just don't do it, we throw.
Well, what are you doing? We're about to screw over a whole success here to continue and potentially find them back to another win in B versus C. It's guaranteed potentially for this game. And We want to see if they can hold on to it, but over here, opposite side, just on the low ground, we talked about this slime, hard to assault up the hill here. Noticeably, yes, Vortex go down, but it's not mostly by the hands of Kella. Instead, the waiting arms of Kansas City above them, but Kella have more problems awaiting them from the deep.
Yeah, this is tough, right? You think about that rotation. Phoenix Legacy, they had just been pushed fully out of command center, and they're electing to not push through that spider chokehold we were talking about earlier. Instead, they're going to force their way up that hill and rotate and mirror Kella. Now Juzo going down at the hands of Imp, and this is looking to be a Phoenix Legacy fight here because Kella has nowhere to go.
Ooh. Fantastic, though, from Phoenix Legacy to push that through from the low ground. In most situations, you wouldn't bet on it there. For now, though, how they get forward is going to be another question. These teams in Thunderwatch have that to answer themselves. Heroes, with supreme control of this height, should be able to watch Game and Gladiators on their rotation out.
Well, my eyes are going to be set on Hard Decky. We saw a lot of 1v3 situations, but it's going to be Heroes already taking down the likes of Danish. So GG need to poise themselves to make sure that they're going to have that. But unfortunately, Heroes is just annihilating everyone and holding that. That high ground at Thunderwatch was absolutely key. But Fire Beavers are like, hey, yo, if you want to make something happen, let's do this. Taskmaster coming in.
Dang!
This is what you want. If you're Fire Beaver, sure, Oi Rain's already down. You don't have the banner. 9 Impulse, a little bit low on health here, needs to clutch this up, but not going to be able to do it. The hip fire on the Nemesis isn't going to be enough, and Babylon's from Heroes clutching and has that gold knockdown.
That was so close. There is no other roster in the entirety of EMEA that could just say, you know what? Let's just try and get the job done. They send 2, knowing that they have no other option up against Heroes here, and they are full health. They are more than comfortable in their current spot after taking out both Gaiman, of course, and my apologies, the other squad that comes through there on Thunderwatch.
Very, very challenging. That was going to be Danish as well, but let's touch base with Bitfix Gaming. I know we talked about them a little bit early on in that broadcast, playing with a new third, cracked on red, just holding out, taking Aurora in the caves. This is tough, right? You're talking about the rotations. You know, that zone came in hand for map number 1 in Aurora's favor. Unfortunately, they were not able to hold on to the down beast, and they're working on that rotation towards High Point, which is actually one of the most disgusting areas of the map to make a playthrough on Storm Point, and all of our teams are essentially just clawing up hills trying to make something happen. Zeri pulling out the Seer exhibit, looking for some information. They just need to get a cheeky LOS and maybe deal a knock, but it's going to actually be Cracked that goes down first.
Zamper could never quite find his way onto that height, and instead, once again, Phoenix Legacy deliver on their defense, but no! Tricks with the jump down from height pulls it off, even though the full wipes come through on Crack and the like. Granted, zone closing in, they have to push further forward here. We tune back in with Heroes still on their rotation out from Thunderwatch. Remember what I said about this open area from Prowlers? It is a minor Dark Veil that gives them their space for what I can only imagine is no seconds long.
Good Seer Q coming out, not necessarily going to provide them with much information. You're just jumping forward and praying and shooting and trying to find some opening damage. But that's your back and you have nowhere to go. And V2 picking up another critical win of a fight here on the edge of zone. But it's going to be K-Swinny's lone gas trap that takes him down. Now E6 is poised to turn this fight into an advantage situation for them. Now let's talk about E6. They're playing with a new third as well. I tweeted out, I was like, who is winning today? And E6 was like a prevalent team that kept getting thrown my way, but unfortunately, Yolu is just better in this situation. A 2v3 out of V2 and the res coming in. Now, this is good for them because you see, Izzy, they went down to Storm. They already have their shield, so they're just gonna have to pop a med kit, and that will allow them to continue their movement forward. They are just playing that edge of the rock. But look at Horizon and Maestro. They've been living in those 2 buildings, 2 zone called to perfection.
Fantastic spot for them, but I want to highlight Jaylings here. Remember, they were the squad that was still hosting a spot directly underneath Maestro at the very beginning, at least, of our game here. They have pulled back towards that high point trench line because, as we just saw from that last zone read, this is going directly up just past Maestro's building. Horizon about to lose out on their side entirely. Those two squads, the only ones in control of a position for Zone 5 further.
This is going to be really interesting. I mean, KCP has been rather under the radar here in map number 2, and they're over to the left side in that building that will also have to move. But you can see V2 starting their rotation. Maestro caught wind of it, a little bit of poke fire going out. This is going to be tough, but KCP has elected to go ahead and utilize a Valkyrie and play for high ground. So my question is, they're going for the building on the right. This is going to start an all-out brawl, Zephyr.
This is tough here. You have to worry about those back-end angles from Eternal, and it forces Zayn down almost immediately. The same spot that we saw Jaylings in is where KCP hosts themselves already immediately with Surdell finding that interceptor pylon down, setting those fence lines up. They will be able to last after having to move from that western spot. Instead, it's Jaylings who give this one away, who look worse for wear after losing out on, well, really dispensable space.
Yo, we've got 3 Seer exhibits out. V2's fighting for their life against Jaylings down there in an isolated 3v3, but JMW is the only sole remaining survivor of Jaylings. Very tough, just trying to do knockdown v knockdown. Does have a little bit of loot, is able to get a shield swap out, but a V2 has 2 members getting green from the high ground, and Jaylings is going to be eliminated. 5 squads remaining, though. Does V2 have enough time to get a reset down on the low ground as Eternal falls as well? Maestro wanting to get into the fight with Horizon. They're down as well. 3 squads remaining, Zephyr.
KCP Maestro here in V2 from the low. We talk about what space is available. Maestro and KCP still holding on to the same building, likely to shore this up until the very, very end here. Not to exit out until the last possible moment. You have to wonder, what angles does V2 have available? How can they potentially find an advantage in this moment, given how much space they are starting to absorb on this pull?
It is going to be really interesting, but KCP under the radar. Curious to see now that they've fought out for space and are fencing off that area. Maestro at the top, holding that high ground is going to be really nice for them. I think I just heard a Sentinel, so they're looking for cheeky lines of sight onto V2. The moment they get a knock onto V2, that is over. So they're just trying to keep them at bay. And at this point in time, I just feel like KCP, they're just playing for the win. They want Maestro to fight V2 so they can go in and be like, you know, we're going to clean this up.
It's going to be very close here. It depends how much restraint Maestro have. If they go for the full send right now and try to assault the bottom end of V2, it is guaranteed that KCP walk this one out. But I love this cheeky move from Zayn, trying to find that off angle, getting to the next position forward that should grant KCP what they need. Piercing Spike's destruction, and the plan is over by Surdell.
I really like this movement throughout. Let's go ahead and jump into a listen-in with KCP to see how they're going to navigate this endgame, because this is going to be exciting.
Don't chill.
Yeah, I'm chilling. Crouch bang. Almost knocked. I'm batting.
Watch out left.
Pushing us. You have to full send them for a second.
No, we can't. I flew up and I tried to...
All you don't. Behind you, don't. You guys.
Nice try, dog.
Okay, so I caster curse them. Unfortunate is not what I thought was going to happen. V2, you know, after a successful rotation throughout Thunderwatch, fight their way tooth and nail into High Point. Despite not having an actual building, Maestro having high ground, KCP having the real estate inside the building, V2 comes out and takes that win.
We talk about their ability to create space there in the end, Tiffany. The only team on the outside of those buildings. And while, yes, I love defensible positions, especially for our early into zone 5s, some of those tend to become a little bit of a funnel, especially when you have that kind of tiered cake of both KCP and Maestro right on top of each other. Neither sent it, therefore they were guaranteed to fight.
Yeah, hey, and it was a crazy one indeed. Let's go ahead and bring back Dia because we have a lot to talk about. I know you've been sitting there watching, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I was just watching, really that final zone is the biggest strategic moment of the game, as it so often is, because what really caught me there was the interaction between Jaylings and V2. It did unfortunately bite Jaylings. You guys talked about it on the broadcast, but it was an interesting way to approach that game because, as we saw, V2 got to benefit from the fact that both Maestro and KCP wanted to play for the win. If either of those squads are comfortable settling for second, the position on low ground is terrible. But if both squads on high ground want to play for the win, you're actually the one that comes out on top because you get to take this guaranteed third party. And it was an interesting way for Jaylings and V2 to approach that game.
I love that take, honestly. It makes me think of like the Spider-Man meme where you're just like pointing and you're all just staring at each other where there's 3 teams left. It's like, all right, but who's going to make the first move? Who's going? And you talk about that, right? It's the playing for the win because you look at the final 3 teams and it's kind of like, okay, do we go for second here? And if that happens, that team will immediately full send onto V2 and just try to soak up the KP they can get and then be all right with that second place 9 placement points. But you're right, that didn't happen and it just caused an all-out chaotic moment where V2 was able to capitalize on it. But let's go ahead and look through some of the match 2 highlights. And D, I know you were focusing more in particular on that end game, but let's talk about some of the early rotations and maybe those fights that kicked off some of the drama.
Yeah, there were a couple of really interesting things that happened early on. I loved the listen-in that we got to jump into with Jaylings on the low ground, but Heroes also played a really important part in this game, not only eliminating multiple squads on their own rotation, but pushing Phoenix Legacy out into the north, to the point that they had to take the rotation up by wall, ending up clogging that area of the map in the same way as it was down towards Thunderwatch, where so many other teams fell, including, I know you called it, Zephyr, once again, Fire Beavers, who almost clutched it.
I could not understand the level of play coming out of them there in that moment, albeit wasn't the win that they wanted. Off on this side, of course, the fact that all these teams were forced to shore themselves towards that high point area is actually something that went on to benefit none other than KCP, even though they flew under the radar. Here, though, V2 with that wonderful defense. And I feel like the fighting that comes through on this side here was absolutely crucial. And I love this about Jaylings. Albeit, we don't love the fact that they go down here. You could tell from the very beginning how cerebral their calls were, knowing that they had to be on that outside to end up in similar straits as V2.
I mean, they were playing for placement. You talk about that, Dia. Yeah, they were playing for the longevity of that game. And it was really interesting to me then when we just watched that back, how V2 was able to withstand that. Because with Maestro on the roof, they were essentially getting griefed on the low ground, but still were able to win that fight.
And V2 withstood so much from constantly being pushed as they were trying to rotate in. Look at how many kills they cleaned up. Oh my lord. V2, let me remind you, are sitting at 23rd coming into the day. Nowhere close to playoffs contention, but this changes everything.
You think? I mean, a solid 26 point. But I feel like if you can throw down a game like this, that has to help your confidence, your mental game levels. And you think about some of our teams that are even in the top 10 right now, overarching for the season standings. Jaylings right there, 3 match days. One of them, I believe, was an 18th place or a 14th place, well outside the top 10, right? Then they come back, they win a match day, they get a second or a third, and they just stay consistent because that's all that takes it. You just need to, let's say you have a bad match day, just be consistent, throw down some match day wins, and this can change the entirety of your split too. But Alliance, unable to get things moving here thus far in our first 2 matches, coming in 14th place. Fire Beavers, Aurora, it's just been quite interesting thus far. You know, I was thinking about this matchup and I was like, this is a powerhouse. This is one of the better matchups that I could think to see here in EMEA, and it's just been quite interesting, Zephyr.
Well, I'm glad to see those names up on top. It's a distance from the norm that we may not be used to, but one we can definitely understand. V2, Maestro, Kella Gaming, all there in our top 3, with then some of that familiarity with Jaylings, Horizon, Union showing up from behind. My major concern as I see it, though, is we've got 1 game left of Stormpoint and only 4 matches to go. Can these teams breed the consistency that keeps them among the rest all day?
I'm trying to think back to kind of where some of our like consistent points that you need to have to be able to withstand some things. And I think Rain Day himself would say, 5 to 8 points on a bad game is what you need consistently. But a win typically nets you north of the 20-point realm area, or 18 to 26 points is what we see. So that can hold you. Let's say you get that 26-point game. It can hold you 1 to 3 matches in my particular opinion. So let's hope that they can carry that momentum going forward. I'd be curious to see. I know you see things a lot when you watch a different perspective and you can kind of like hone in on the final circle, because it's different when we watch it casting over it and then Dia watches it back and he's like, well, here's what I saw during that. And I think when we were highlighting that initial kind of 3v3 against Jaylings and V2, that was a pivotal move there, because you think that call they made when we had that listen in, Zephyr, it was, we stay here, we win the game. Well, then you go on. If they win that fight against V2, there is a very real possibility that it's actually Jaylings taking the win.
It's something that I tried to bring up a little bit earlier on. It just shows that they absolutely understand how these things play out far and above steps ahead. Now, we never really got to talk about it, but I absolutely love the Catalyst play here. As Maestro comes down from that height, it should be a moment that you get to lay in on V2, but they are at a disadvantage. It actually chokes this fight to occur between the Pioneers and Maestro, as they have no choice but to contest in the single 3v3 that lays out ahead of them.
Yeah, it's challenging because we were in a listening there with KCP to hear how they were going to approach it. We don't even see the Dark Veil at that point from their POV, and V2 is just chilling the best way that they have. That's the only cover that they get in the Dark Veil. It takes about 5 to 8 seconds to fully pull up, so you have to be able to survive 5 seconds while that wall is essentially being built. Then you go on, that timer starts and you're like, okay, this wall in your head, you've got X amount of seconds, it's going to go down in 5 seconds, we have to make our play now, right? Very well done, very well executed by V2, and I would love to see them continue that momentum going into match number 3. But enough of me, enough of my thoughts, guys. I'm going to throw it over to D and Zephyr, because match number 3 is about to get underway.
All right, I'm feeling good, Zephyr. We're popping into the third game, right back on Storm Point, and I'm sure you're sick of me already, but I got good news for you. We're locked in for at least another 20 minutes or so as this game gets underway. So let's think about how we're approaching this game, because we've had 2 very different finishes. One at Downed Beast, one all the way on the high ground, both actually interesting in the way that they incentivize zone play. Downed Beast is hard to get into late, so is that high point area, but there are other positions on the map, specifically more central ones, that can be a little more forgiving, especially on Storm Point.
It's something we'll have to take a look at here. The mercy that may, the zone that be, the RNG gods, and how they may grant here. Whatever it is clear to me that when it comes to Storm Point, you have to define yourself quickly. And if you don't, you aren't going anywhere.
It's time to jump in. Let's see what these teams choose to define themselves as, where the ring pulls, and how they adapt, because it is time to adapt or die, Zephyr, as we jump into the third match on Storm Point. Let's see. I am looking for something a little more central for these squads, and for the teams that have suffered, especially in the consistency today, maybe a chance to jump back up. I mean, Kella, a prime example, winning game number 1, jumping down. Tiff said they have a little bit of holdover, right? The 20-plus point finish does keep you in the running for a little while, but you do have to re-up those points every once in a while as well.
Right. I say it's always something that exists within your first 1 or 2 games after you put up those big scorings, that you can kind of rest on your laurels. Now, granted, I think you'll be maybe a little bit more happy with a zone like this. None of the spots that currently exist are too difficult to find your way in. Everyone on equal footing when we talk about that next rotation forward. Albeit, though, in comparison to, say, something like Fish Farms or Cenote, where you can get so many of our rosters clustered in before that end game, something like Cascade Falls is a bit more punishing.
Play a little bit more wide open, perhaps, if you are coming in from the edge. But as you say, I mean, these buildings, so obtrusive, especially when E6 are running the caustic, if they have chosen to stick with that going into game 3, and I suspect that they have. Other teams are already going to be picking up on the fact that this ring is in fact coming over into the Cascade area. Horizon notably going and picking up the ring console over by Stormcatcher right now. They've got a really swift rotation that they can make should they want to place themselves in zone, and I'm looking around the map at Heroes as well and how they'll choose to play this out, because they were on the warpath last game, constantly pushing teams, constantly looking for fights.
It's something that we didn't really get to see reflect, especially in that leaderboard, as it was V2 that came in at the very end here and truly really absorbed the wealth of that KP. Meanwhile, though, for the KCP boys, they've gotten themselves into a bit of a tussle with the muscle from behind. Eternal, they find great Trident damage, but they do not care. They are more than happy to send themselves into Cascade Falls, land a good position that they know they can guarantee endgame play from.
Now, Eternal pay a lot of respect to Pioneers in the entirety of the EMEA region right there, knowing that though they found even flesh damage off the Trident, that the respect that they give is enough to let Pioneers continue to rotate in, both squads prioritizing instead just moving their way into the ring. And with where Pioneers are at right now, it's a great time for them to do it, being able to claim one of the more central positions here and hopefully open themselves up for a great end game. Dynasty, however, have got different plans as they pick a fight around the edge.
Keeping this one moving forward, they've already found the damage to bite. No health available on the likes of Phoenix Legacy. We talk about their southern rotation out of Checkpoint, and this time it has been stopped in its tracks. There is no time to heal. There's barely a medkit in play. Sabs is the first one to go down, but as Tolkien steps up, Draft is back with the Nemesis.
Mania's got full purples as well up on high ground. It's an impossible position for Phoenix Legacy. Somehow breaking through the purple shields, though, there is still a chance, and yet Phoenix Legacy bite the dust. It was minimal, and Dynasty come out on top.
It's a huge loss for the Legacy here as they go down in 20th. I remind you, a top 3 competing team out of game 1, something that's going to hurt their position, especially as we go on to World's Edge, especially as we start talking about that team. I mean, they land landslide. It's about as bad as it gets.
It's been such a rough couple games for Phoenix Legacy as well, given where they're landing and the fact that it seems that they are constantly being pushed in Ring 1. They can't catch a break. They don't have shields, and teams are so confident taking fights up against Phoenix Legacy and the positions that they put themselves that when we finally see them stand their ground, they've got nothing to really hold on to. It's an unfortunate way to go out, but other teams perhaps positioning themselves in a slightly more central position, got a little bit more HP to work with. One of those, Horizon Union, who have again joined up in the barrage of squads that are populating Cascade Falls.
Once again, we're really seeing some of those patterns here. It was last game, Horizon Union, and there they are! J-Lings as well, KCP. These 3 squads were so quick to make their way towards High Point and, well, escort themselves to an end game winning position. Now down there, Watson's in play, Zone's in control. They will have this available likely for the rest of the game here. Pioneers are trying to see if they can sneak a peek, though, on that recent redeploy.
In a position like this, Nasky has to watch his back because there are a lot of teams that will rotate through the high ground, the actual falls proper, and just take some shots at Pioneers back, getting aggressive as much as they can. There's a lot of space that can be taken up, perhaps a better building to be found as everyone else starts to make their way in. Stormcatcher becoming incredibly populated as teams look for that next ring scan, especially as this next zone is about to close. You can tank zone for a little while and stick around.
So most of our squads are going to be betting on that Cascade Falls area, which is good. It's one of the best places to house yourself, especially for a zone like this, even if it doesn't move directly towards this POI. I do look towards Maestro, though, and Danish a bit further towards that north. For Stormcatcher, though, on the outskirts of our zone, action continues.
High ground continued to be held by Alliance, unable to break
good
through the
time.
Catalyst wall on the other side, but Alliance have given us yet another taste of perhaps a new meta. This is just an experimentation game for them, but they've chosen to whip out the Newcastle for this one, giving them a lot of staying power in these later zones. They've won the fight for now, taking away control of the Ring console, and fortunately enough for them, Stormcatcher as well. They've got all height, and evidently, you just want nothing to do with them. It's a full disengage on the low ground as Passion leave.
Alliance, though, do have to set their sights a little bit further out towards that western area. They actually can't quite invest on that replicator or console in ways that you would hope. Currently, in a sightline of Nightmare here, I would hope that Seven, Fraz, and Limek are going to try to punish this one out, but it seems like they themselves are also more interested in moving forward.
And looking at the play retroactively, Alliance can't even scan the beacon if they wanted to. So not sticking around here because they want the information, but instead trying to bait some fights around the edge of the ring. Alliance try to get aggressive there purely to pick up KP, and it's an approach. It's a very valid approach as we get later into the day, and Alliance specifically are one of those teams that's looking down bad in the points.
I always find it interesting with Alliance. They're the other side of the coin when we talk about the edge playing rosters within EMEA. You have, of course, Fire Beavers and the extreme success that they found alongside it. But then you have Alliance, who are a lot more placement oriented when we start to talk about the statistics that reign supreme over this team. I will say, when it comes to just generally where they exist right now, tanking quite a bit of damage, vested in those medkits. We'll see how it presents when it comes to the command center.
Medkit Simulator! Alliance, they've got a decent amount of time to spend out here as well. Whenever they want it, Valkult is available, but for the moment, they're picking up better gear. They're making use of the replicator in such a way that Nightmare's position gatekeeping them starts to look a little iffy as well, and it is just a game of chicken out here. Alliance can tank the zone seemingly forever, and Nightmare have to know with the replicator available. That's a nice little hack, by the way. Hacky's making use of a great gravity cannon tech to grab a little bit of extra verticality.
I cannot believe Passion is still over here. They try to sneak back in to potentially replicate, to maybe get the zone console, to do just about anything. I don't think they expected Alliance to be in this kind of timing there, which, I mean, to me, isn't really surprising. In terms of zone-oriented play, in terms of the timings, they rate the lowest statistically in the entire EMEA region. They take the most time out in zone, albeit not quite the most damage.
We were talking about this earlier, but especially when compared up against Fire Beavers. Fire Beavers have taken enough damage this split from the zone alone to have been knocked 192 times. 192 health bars they've tanked up, Zephyr. It is ridiculous how much time squads like that spend in the zone.
Mind you, they're also still one series behind the rest
Oh
of
my God.
some of the other teams here, and they still rate the highest on that statistic.
Absolutely ludicrous what we've gotten from these teams so far. Passion do eventually disengage, and Alliance actually reposition as well. Both teams trying to find themselves, as you would say, a happy home in the zone, and Alliance seem to have this high ground uncontested. No one is up here at the top of Cascade Falls.
Tough to hold on to. You have to have a Watson or potentially that of a Newcastle. We don't see it often, but the castle wall does hold its usefulness. Now, granted, I'm not completely sold yet. I am a person who kind of bears his weight when it comes to Newcastle because I really look towards that Watson's interceptor pylon to provide the second half of that defense. So we'll have to see how it fares for Alliance as our game moves on. For Fire Beavers, they're like ducks in the rain when it comes to the storm. Happy to exist here and happy to take this fight.
The best position you have to imagine, and yet Fire Beavers disengage. They're giving up the replicator on high ground as well as the fight. Clearly shaken by what's occurred earlier in the day. Fire Beavers perhaps not having the games that they expected, and instead making their way towards the zone. You gotta hope they have enough medkits, as Aurora certainly do on their own way out from checkpoint.
Tough for them right now. Obviously, we talk about that next movement forward. Thankfully, the northern side that we talked about earlier on today, only really truly held by Maestro and I believe Vortex there, right? So they do have a lot more freedom when it comes to those chokes, albeit not information they currently have available to them.
It's a decent position to find yourself in as well. Very quickly, Aurora do pick up on the fact that other teams are aware of their positioning, and their meds are running a little bit low. They've got to think about how exactly they're going to move into these subsequent zones, as really the closest place they can get, they still have to go through all of Wall to make it beautiful. Pulling up the map there is gravity cannon straight on over to Wall, then to the south, largely uncontested there, but not the end of their journey by a long shot. Aurora in a very difficult spot, and E6 also way out of the zone.
Taking their time in that millage area, as you have coined. Now we tune into the opposite side of the wall of Cascades, where so many of our teams had tried to set up Dynasty versus Nightmare right now. Nightmare looking low on the low ground, already facing a single knock.
Looks like a disengage coming through from them around the outside, perhaps trying to play underneath the building. You are praying for a third party at this point, but it doesn't look like anyone's coming to save you. Dynasty drop down, and Tolkien finds just a smattering of damage before jumping back up to the rest of the team, wanting to avoid that third party possibility as well. Everybody very aware, especially on Stormpoint, that can happen at any second. Nightmare gets choked out on the low ground. They go down, and Dynasty very quickly reset, constantly on their toes, prepared for the next fight.
But notably, it is at the hands of Jailings, which already gives me the information that they have rotated out more directly, playing for the west side of the zone. Tolkien here with the charge. Sentinel, you have to hope that one counts. You have to hope they can't get a revive off. Either way, it's happy damage in his hands.
Gonna feel pretty good, and perhaps even having just changed the game of another squad, is right now even fights are going on elsewhere on the map. Bitfix Gaming not having a good time right now, but as it appears, we've got plenty of space to play even among these rocks, as Vortex hold the open ground and Kella right alongside them sit in the choke.
Taking their time out for this one could be incredibly difficult for Kella. They already dealt with the knock from Tolkien only moments ago. Now back into play here. We talk about the height that lays ahead of this position. It is something that does work in these final zones that they know they need. They need to have if they want to keep this one moving forward. Problem is, 3v3 is absolutely imminent.
Certainly is, and with the Bangalore smokes, they're not running Catalyst. There's only so much you can do. And the Seer, especially useful if you can find a good place to lay down the ultimate. But Kella don't really have that so far. It's a position to turtle from, to wait for their next rotation. And in this particular case, Odie's Valk ult may very well come in handy, especially based on this next zone close. Nobody knows where the ring is going after this. It's going to be revealed to all squads simultaneously, Kella included. So let's see what happens.
I will say, coming through here into this open area is never the easiest position, but with that height and that, you can literally see the support bin on the mini-map right now. That's like the minor cover you get from that northern angle. Now, granted, not a composition that typically can truly do so, and Vortex much more in a position to start claiming this one out, especially as they slow walk in this next zone.
And I think Kella on the low ground know that. They've started to ping out on Cascade as well. Vortex already making the proactive moves to secure their positioning that, as we spoke of, they should have in the bag. They gotta watch their backs though, and holding on to height for right now. Bushi's got a good angle. Heroes go down to Alliance in the meantime, so we're starting to drop squads as already teams are preemptively rotating in, and Jailings sit atop the height just below Cascade, actually doing really well defending their own building with a plethora of Watson fences.
We talked about it earlier when we saw that fight with Nightmare, and now with this height, they want to make sure they clean out the L before it gets too dire here. Fire Beavers from below already taking full flesh damage. They get the return that they want, though, but from above, Nags with a double response here. One final member on the interior, 9 Impulse back inside for now. Gonna see if he can maybe try to pull off a revive, but at least get that full thirst.
just trying to secure a point. JMW being full thirsted, there's a big problem for J-Lings, but Impulse has problems of his own as he tries to escape. He got 1 placement point, he got 3 KP. It's a good game for Fire Beavers, but it needs to be better to hit that 6 or more point mark, make them feel all the more comfortable. J-Lings, however, go down to a push from Dynasty, and suddenly the turns have tabled.
The third party comes true here in the end. Dynasty were being shot out. They had those angles, and they knew they could take advantage. Now they themselves also having to contest. They hand this building over and away. They have to pull themselves back into it. Eternal now choking from all angles. Slab is trying to get in, but the door is blocked. Dynasty are handling this 3v2.
Dynasty know exactly what they need to do, but you don't expect the charge rifle at close range. Eternal strike back. Mania has no health to work with. Put up on the height. The Mastiff connects and Eternal go down. 13 squads left, but the fight still isn't over for Dynasty as they're still coexisting. Yet another squad is rolled up. Maybe it's Fire Beavers come back, and it is as they go down. Finally, Dynasty get a chance to reset.
It is our Pro League friends from the past, our Challenger Circuit competitors, Dynasty, that come out among the rest. We look back, though, towards Cascades here, where the majority of our teams are currently stationed. Horizon Union, notably, who have been here all game long. Now, below them, V2, who also host a position. I guarantee you, though, these spots are going to be pulled away a little bit of that funnel that we saw from that last game.
Gaming Gladiators on the low ground, watching this all happen. See the death boxes drop, but aren't too worried, as Horizon controlling the high ground as well. Should be able to bunker up should they choose to, and I believe they should, as this ring only closing further out from them. And Horizon Union have to start thinking about their rotation and how it'll compare to those of the squads around them.
I really like the space that they're starting to work with here, but it is still no guarantee. It's a direct low ground to their left there. Meanwhile, Dynasty, they have to give up the L building that they just fought so hard for. Of course, across from them, both the likes of Kella and Vortex, a much more oppressive height that they have to work with. Odie is low, Flesh and Vortex might be coming through the third.
They absolutely are. This ends with 2 squads dead. Vortex see that the fight is over, know that their time is now, and in they come to clean up Kella Gaming. 1 more member left on the other side, and it's all Vortex as they take down both Dynasty and Kella Gaming for the price of 1.
Just Fushi, by the way. Just Fushi. Didn't need to extend anybody else over there to get the job done. They are now the only team outside of Height that actually reigns supreme. All these buildings no longer in play. Alliance, Horizon, KCP, Gaming. They all have to find a way out. Gaming, the first team to move and the first team to be in the stream of bullets.
Now, Alliance have no position to play, but they do have a Newcastle. If they can make use of this, they could survive, but they need to get effect. Back with the team. Quick shield swap, and in comes the 99, bringing him back to the squad just in time to go down. It's an instant res out of Hackett as Vortex start to push up. These are the last 2 squads. Vortex control the high ground. Vortex fire down on Alliance, and Vortex will be taking this 3rd game on Storm Point. Nemesis dropped down, and it's an easy dub as Vortex reigns supreme.
You might have known him as SPS, but under the name Vortex, they absolutely blow through the competition here. We talk about an early position in that choke from that northern angle, defending against the likes of Kella, Dynasty, and so many other squads to be the only Supreme squad to watch the chaos outside of Cascades.
The beauty of playing out there in the open, but we got to yell over it. We were getting super excited. Tiff, what did you see?
Look, I was really excited. I'm not going to lie. Things started to get really interesting the moment we see Hackett experimenting with Newcastle. And they were doing really well with Ashe. They're getting a lot of that information through Ashe's passive, but watching him jump on a Newcastle, my thoughts immediately go to, okay, well, Hackett is usually the IGL. Typically, before we saw him on Ashe, he was playing Seer, playing a little more just further back from Effect and Yuki, and just kind of letting them do, entry, refragger, and then he would come in and clean up while feeding that information. So you have to be a little more closer to your fraggers to make that Newcastle work. So watching them take the positioning there at that early, the north side, the top of Cascade Falls, you called it, right? You're like, this is only possible because they have Newcastle's wall ability to really kind of give them a little bit more space in that area. But you also brought up a good point, the interceptor pylon from Watson. Typically Newcastle, we'd see it with the Watson. And I'm thinking back to the only team that I've witnessed recently, Gonbray in APAC North was playing Newcastle Watson still this split, and playing it really well. So it's tough, but that was the first thing that immediately caught my eye. And at the end game, it goes to the prevalence. I immediately see the Newcastle there. That initial knock goes out into effect, and I'm like, is that res going to go off? Is it going to be fruitful here? Can they turn this around? No, they really didn't, yeah.
No, it was a tough position to work with. And Zephyr, there were two very different ways to play that zone. But especially as you're coming out of Cascade, you have the option to, like Vortex, play around the outside, try and capitalize on the open territory, or go in, do some honest work, and get farming. And that's exactly what Alliance chose to do.
You just got to do some real honest work there, Zephyr.
It is incredibly tough, though. When you are on that Newcastle, I still want to give props to Alliance where it's due, because making to the top 3 clearly shows me that in the transition down from that height into Cascades, they made it work. The real question, though, and especially for all those teams who are considering picking it up now, you have to analyze, there is so much new applicable space for you to work with when you have that legend available. It ain't perfect. You ain't got the Watson. So many teams are gonna try to send it on you, but it's almost like playing into the negative, playing into the zone, playing somewhere that you shouldn't be. It works. Going out there, taking off angles, not being in that building. It is something that can come together, but it is completely against the norm of what your average IVLs or anyone is typically thinking.
I love that, Zephyr. That was good. I love that so much. It was very hands-on, very good. No, you said something there that you're talking, just breaking all those things down. And speaking of the analysis, sorry, I always have to mess with you, buddy. But here's the deal. Let's go ahead and bring in our beautiful guest. We're gonna have a good interview here, and I want to jump into some more analysis. And the best person that we could have on our show right now is gonna be Loopy, the current of performance and coach for Vexed Gaming, buddy. I know we had a good chat in London, and it was really good to see you here. So thank you so much for stopping by. But I want to go ahead and give you the floor to introduce yourself and talk more about your role in particular as being the head of performance and coach, and like what that entails maybe on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you guys mentioned, I'm Loopy. I'm the head of performance and the coach of Vexed Apex team. Basically what that entails is like I help players identify their goals inside and outside of a game, and I develop strategies and like ways to help them achieve those goals. A lot of what I do like focuses on like mental health, like stuff outside of the game, like your personal life, your fitness, and your nutrition. And all of those things we kind of blend together and focus on like the fundamentals of Apex, but also like the fundamentals of life. And it's really supposed to just help the gamers like be healthier, obviously. But when you combine all of these things together, being healthy also helps you perform better. So like here at Vexed, I think our main goal is really just to provide everything, all the resources, all the strategies for the players, and kind of like give them the reins and let them execute. But I guess it's just more of like, doing our checks and balances, make sure there's accountability and stuff like that. So really we combine all that into our performance and stuff like that and playing. So.
I love that. No, thank you so much for highlighting that, because I know there's people that are going to be watching this broadcast that are at home, maybe they don't know essentially what that entails, and that's a lot of work, and you're huge for the EMEA scene in general. I know for a long time you were also running the scrims behind the scenes, and I've seen a lot on the timeline about that recently. So your work doesn't just end at everything that you do, which is a very long laundry list. But Dia, I'm going to kick it over to you. Do you have a question for Loopy?
Absolutely. I mean, I love your approach, and Loopy, first I'm going to say, big fan. I remember meeting you back in Raleigh, and it's nice to see you here on the podcast. It was
crazy.
As we look forward into the future of Apex Legends, you talk about this holistic approach to gaming and to health that you're integrating over at Vexed. And I'm wondering if we can take a slice of that pie and expand it. What do you think is the piece that you've integrated at Vexed that more teams around the world could learn from?
Sleep schedules. Honestly, like keeping your players give them, make sure that they get like their 7 to 8 hours a day or a night, you know, and actually like sleeping regular hours. I think it can be kind of detrimental to your health if you stay up late and you grind and you're going to bed at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, and then like waking up at 4. That really messes with your body, your circadian rhythm, like the homeostasis that you got going on. Introduces a lot of stress and stuff like that. And I think that that's probably like the biggest thing is like if you're working with players, like make sure they're getting good sleep. But another thing I guess is to just provide like hydration and stuff like that, like inform players on like the best practices of like, like, hey, listen, drinking an energy drink is not necessarily, it's hydration, but it's not like hydration at like 9 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's best to just stick with like water. But then we also delve into like healthy eating habits and just habits in general. Whether, like maybe it's a bad habit that you stay up late and you're playing video games and stuff like that. Just kind of like reining that in and trying to reintroduce like good habits and good playing times and good health and drinking water and, not chugging energy drinks all night till, 1 a.m., that kind of stuff. But yeah, like sleep is probably like the biggest thing that like I want the guys and every player to like really focus on, because I think that like that's just kind of like how you start and end your day. And it's probably like the most important time that you spend when you're not awake.
A quick follow-up on that, actually. I mean, talking about sleep, I've seen a little bit of discussion recently about optimizing your sleep specifically for ALGS match days, and it's something that teams, players have been discussing. What's been the best solution for you in terms of where the ALGS lines up in your players' days?
So like my players are European, so it lines up in the evening, so that's good for them. And our scrims have traditionally been in the evening around the same exact time. I would say that like it's more into like LAN that we really kind of like we're talking about sleeping habits. It's because the time like going up into LAN was like really, really important. And then on top of that, the players were traveling. Of course, our players are European, so like they didn't have that much of an issue. But I know like other teams, like the whole transition going in like 4 days, maybe 2-3 days even before LAN, and then just expecting to show up from across the world and play to your best. I think that can be kind of difficult. So I know we gave our players like a few extra days, and we sent them to bed, from boot camp every single night at like the same time, and ensure that, like we weren't staying up late. But at the same time, I tried to do like some sleep tracking, use like the technology like phones and stuff and apps that I've introduced to like help like them like mark down the times that they're sleeping. Whether they like stick with it or not, it's really good to know that, like they understand like the sleep habits are good and that they're kind of tracking it and taking accountability of it. So.
Hey man, it honestly incredibly impressive there, because it's something that usually goes unsaid in the work that lies behind some of these teams. So keep it up. Keep that next order from McDonald's away from Tyler's hands. The Dr. Pepper
oh my gosh,
can stay on the sidelines.
The Dr. Pepper, it's crazy, yeah. Tyler
I know it's
alone,
tough.
He's hard work.
Trust me, I've definitely heard and seen it on the timeline here. But I know your role, it expands past that, Loopy. You're not just the health guru here. And Vexed performance has been absolutely a success coming into the split. But at the very start of it, things had changed. We got to talk to Tyler, of course, and Matafe, who really said he wanted to evolve the direction and play style of this team. I know you play a pivotal role in those decisions and how they transpire. So I want to hear from you. How did you help Vexed put themselves in the mental, especially after playoffs and especially going into a new era?
Yeah. So like, I guess the first thing is like at LAN, like we're the lead up to LAN. I didn't want to make any changes. Just a couple of like kind of like minor changes. And that was simply because of the time limit that we had. But in the back burner, like I gave them all the information about like what I wanted the team to do in the future and the split coming with the new changes, the update. So yeah, like I played a big role in that simply because watching these guys from a different team, like I saw like how the edge play style primarily like led them into a lot of high risk scenarios where they couldn't essentially come out of. And I really wanted to reduce the risk and get the guys to end game scenarios because I knew that they could fight, right? It's not a question of whether or not this team can fight and if they have like good mechanics. It's more of like them getting to the positions and to the end game to actually win the game, which means that they're transitioning from like playing for KP or playing for like a big game here and there to playing to win every single game. And that's kind of like the mentality that we've put forward. And we've stopped like focusing on like the meta, I guess, and more so like putting ourselves on legends that, one, we're comfortable playing, and two, that we're like more able to like be creative with, I guess, and kind of like fight back against some of the meta. Before they were playing like 3 legends and that was all they could play, but now I think everybody can play like 4 legends each. So it's like everybody is very comfortable on multiple legends. So.
And that's exactly what you need to have happen, you know, going into Split 2 playoffs. Yeah, I know Zephyr does what Zephyr does, bro. It be like that sometimes, but that's immensely accurate. You're doing a great job over there. And before we let you go, we're going to run the final circle. I want to hear your thoughts kind of when you're watching this, how you would approach it and maybe any nuances that you see going through this, Loopy. So this is your show now, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. I see this cluster right here in Cascades, and I think every team that was there probably understood that this was going to happen, so they were trying to get into a good position to clean up the KP as the zone was going in. But I think I really want to highlight Vortex. Like, really early, they realized maybe not where the zone was going, but how it was going to pull, and they decided to clean up on the side, like Dynasty and Kella. I think that was just a really good play because, as you can see, as the zone pulls in, like all these teams have to basically walk into them. That's kind of like something that like I emphasize is like putting yourself in good in-game positions. This zone wasn't as predictable as other Stormpoint zones, but I think what that helped Vortex, you know, put themselves into a position that they felt like would be the best. So yeah, I just want to highlight that. Like I think it's really smart that if you know that you're not gonna have to fight everybody, like clearing out your sides and clearing out the teams that are around you, so you can just face the teams that are gonna come at you because of the zone. I just wanted to highlight that. Vortex, the same with Kella and V2. Those are some of the teams that are down on the bottom of the leaderboards right now, but they're actually absolutely performing today. So that's like really exciting to see that. See maybe a little bit of a shakeup and scare some of the other teams that are, you know, looking to get ahead of us right now.
I love that you bring that up because I was looking at that immediately. You know, Maestro 16th place on the last B versus C matchup. V2 had 8th, of course, the last time we saw them, but they're right. They're at that bottom of the leaderboard in the EMEA region. Do you think this shakeup, do you think there's anything easily attributable to that?
I don't think there's anything necessarily attributable to that. I would say that these teams are teams that have a lot to lose. Like if they don't succeed, obviously they could get relegated. And I'm sure a lot of teams don't want to, you know, have to go through Challenger circuit again. So like right now, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of energy and a lot of motivation to not get relegated and to potentially put themselves into a position to be in the next Pro League.
That's true. That is the goal. Not get relegated. Not only is that dream the Split 2 playoffs, but not getting relegated is a big one. We were talking about that a lot in the pre-show. But thank you so much, Loopy, for joining us here on the broadcast today. It's fun to stay at home. But I'm sure we'll see you at Split 2 playoffs. We can run it back, have some good conversations. But that's something that's interesting to talk about, right? You can get relegated to Challenger Circuit in the Pro League qualifiers, or you could have your hands at trying to get into Pro League. Maybe you're new to Apex Comp and you want to make something happen. Throw your hands in the mix with some of this. We have registration opening May 2nd for the May 27th through 29th Challenger Circuit 3. Maybe you just want to dabble a little bit, get a little bit comp Apex experience ahead of year 4, but now I just made up a new word. I'm not even gonna call it Comp Apex. It's Compax. Okay, guys? I hear you laughing, Dia. It's Compax.
If you want to see what that Compax experience might look like, we've also got the final stream coming on tomorrow for both EMEA and North America. Zephyr and I already know are going to be covering all the EMEA actions, so you can check that out, as those will be the streams that are happening tomorrow, and you'll get to see the finals and what it looks like to attempt to qualify into the Pro League.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And it's interesting because you'll see a lot of teams that have already had Pro League experience that maybe they want to go hone in on something. I can think of some people that are like, hey, you know, maybe I don't want to focus on being a fragger. I actually want to practice my IGL skills. So I'm going to step away, form my own Challenger Secret team, and learn all the IGL realm. So that is a lot of what we've seen, but the finals can get really wild. But here's the deal. I mean, I sent Dia away last time. I think I'm going to kick Zephyr to the curb now for game number 4, and I'm going to still Dia, and we're going to cast this one. So go enjoy your break, grab some snacks, maybe some hydration for yourself. Loopy said it's really important, but Dia, match number 4. We are heading on over to World's Edge.
Yes, we are. And I really like World's Edge. I'm excited to see how it plays out with these teams because already Stormpoint started off really, really aggressive. Teams are clearly ready to risk it all in order for a chance to qualify for LAN, to keep themselves out of relegation. And I'm expecting that to translate as we jump forward into a new map. So can't wait to get it going, as already teams are starting to pile in. Lobbies are going, and that means that we get to see how this all plays out. Or I dare say I'm expecting more Caustic, if anything.
Ooh, Caustic. I mean, that's interesting. We got Kella Gaming, your match 1 winners, V2, and then more importantly, Vortex as well. A lot of interesting names that have a lot to play for here in this series. And now for the teams that maybe aren't where they want to be on the leaderboard here for the day, they have to step things up going into World's Edge. And one team in particular that we've been looking at a lot, Aurora. They've had the biggest question mark. A lot of teams have been talking about them, not even just in the EMEA region. It's kind of that, like, I wouldn't say we're going to go with the what's happened, because I feel like a lot of teams are running into issues here in Split 2, whether it's the current meta, it's adapting to some things. But I will say, I want to shout out Aurora for putting out content pieces on YouTube with English subtitles, because I have a language barrier when it comes to learning out a lot about that. And, you know, Ranches himself said he prefers World's Edge better, so I guess we've got to see what's going to happen here, Dia.
Passion already hot dropping. Seems like they're going to find the fight up against Maestro. It's a pretty nice one to take as they got the uneven drop. But with Rugby also going down, it's time for Maestro to head for the hills. You're not getting this revive. And Sonya on the Pathfinder of all legends has chosen to whip it out here. And fortunately enough, has the movement to get away if needed.
There was a full article done by Tom about why Sonya was breaking out the Pathfinder. And this is paining me because I can't even say that I read it. I have it tabbed too. And so go now. If you haven't read that article, it will tell you all of the answers of why they are breaking out the Pathfinder. But now Sonya, the lone Pathfinder in World's Edge, trying to hide from Passion. You can run, but they know exactly where you're heading.
Got some good angles with the Nemesis. See if he can make it up through these zip lines, and it appears that Passion won't be overextending. A wise position from them is out of staging. You want to get as much loot as possible. The POI is really good because it actually has some decent loot for you to pick up, and nice pathing out of there as well. It should still be a quick rotation, however, as the zone is pulling us up into the northwestern side, largely encircling the Countdown, Skyhook, and Trials areas. And we know how it gets when zones pull like this, Tiff. It's so important to move yourself there quickly and get to the northern side of Trials if you can.
Well, you think about the teams that land Trials and Skyhook West, I think immediately E6. This is an E6 zone for them. And if they can establish that position earlier, which they already will have the advantage to do so, they're going to have all of the loot from Trials, so they're going to be absolutely boosted and ready to take a fight. But we talk about all of the calls for zone. Kansas City Pioneers, you know, Nasky, the moment he sees some of those zone pulls, he's going to want to start that rotation and put them in a game-winning play position. Zane already made their way first, and you can just see E6 setting up inside that tower immediately.
It's a good position to hold. We talked about wanting to prioritize the north, and there is some room for doubt here. KCP get to split the difference by sitting inside of Trials, where you have access to both the Skyhook and further western areas. They are one of those teams that is going to be privileged in this way, where looking a little further south at teams like Heroes and Nightmare, Heroes especially today who've been playing aggressively, they're going to need to make use of that in order to get themselves into a good position, because looking at the chokes they have to go through, I don't envy them. There's tunnel outside of Landslide. There's all this open ground out to the west of Landslide. And then there's Lava Fissure that gets more treacherous as you go further into the west. More of a chance of being held out. More teams to go through. It's a very scary time to be in the Apex Legends Pro League. But that's the reality these teams are facing up against, and one that Phoenix Legacy is already coming to terms with.
Ooh, that's going to be rather challenging. I feel like we just saw Alpha Draft potentially go down because it's, oh, there goes the res off. Shout out to Sabs for being able to recover that. But Horizon is positioning themselves in a very, very nice way. I like that, but they need to make sure that they can manage to handle that. But Nasky, this is brilliant, you know, going to high ground and getting that charge rifle in near LOS of E6 to completely deteriorate their resources. Now that's something that's tough, right? E6 lands trials and they only get to loot this area, which will give you good shields, good bags, maybe a gold knockdown to boot, but you're not going to have a plethora of healing resources here. So if Nasky can utilize the charge rifle and absolutely grief them to a sense, you have to be able to maintain that, and that's going to be tough. Yeah,
Nasky, with the blue shield as well, has the responsibility of farming this up for his teammates should they choose to trade out later. Hitting purple now, it is about picking up as much HP as you can for this end game, and that's what Pioneers are playing for. They're not looking for the second-to-second plays, but instead absolutely focusing on 10, 15 minutes out from now, when eventually they're going to have to drop down from trials and preparing themselves for a play like that. Perhaps a little overextension. Zain and Nasky seek a play that truly doesn't exist as J-Lings have pushed all the way inside and have themselves yet another skirmish to contend with. It's a great generator that should keep J-Lings safe, but it's temporary safety as they're flanked.
Yeah, you think about the Jenny coming out 250 HP for the shields, and it's going to eat up any ordnance that comes their way. And you can see that Arc Star immediately sucked up, and Nag's going to push in and completely cuts the wings off of Yolu. Now with that opening knock, this gives J-Lings the advantage, and they can kind of just heal. Nags will have to get some shields before he can go back in, but this is Noises and JMW's time to kind of shine and encompass, putting damage down so they can focus on healing.
It's an ingenious way to deal with the situation, but they're not the only ones fighting. Fire Beavers have their own engagement up against the Gaben Gladiators. And it seems to be going their way as J-Lings certainly have enough time to take on V2. It's been a quick wall out of Izadin to defend the last two remaining members, but there's nowhere to go for V2. It's not an easy exit out of trials, and they certainly can't stay here.
No, and I mean, you've already got a match win in map number 2, so you don't want to go out now. You want to continue that consistency. Meanwhile, Gaben Gladiators is our first team to fall here in match number 4. You'd recently highlighted them kind of taking on Fire Beavers, but Nightmare on the kill feed right there has already picked a knock onto 2 members of the FB team. That's rather dire for them, and they do run the gauntlet of being on the edge, but things are looking to be a little tough for them near Fragment. But J-Lings still here, now sitting on triple blue, so a very good engagement for them, and they're not going to continue that fight onto V2. V2 is kind of just saying, hey, we're disengaging, we understand. They weren't even able to get the banner from Yolu.
And it's a risky disengage exactly because of this. We talked about it when they were inside. You can't stay in trials and you can't very well leave. V2 are forced into a no-win situation and very quickly taken down. 17 squads left, and it's the natural conclusion of the engagement we just saw in trials. Danish actually encountering a similar position as they've got to transform themselves in between buildings, finding one already occupied.
Yes, it's kind of interesting. We've had a lot of pop-off moments from Danish on their last match day showing, so I was really excited to see what they were going to bring to the table today. And coming into map number 4 in 18th place with 17 points overall, I feel like this is the game in which they're going to have to turn the tides. But checking in with everyone's favorite Beavers, it's going to be the Fire Beavers. 9 Impulse, last alive for the team, does not have the banners and has kind of done a negative rotate out into the zone to see if he can finesse himself, maybe bide some time to hope that that team is choosing to rotate and not banner camp, Dia.
Oh, the survey beacon, that's going to be really tough. Now that he knows there's nowhere truly to run but back into the zone, Impulse is going to be hiding for now, but you already know that there's going to be a Seer on his tail, and he's got to wait this out, waiting for the med kit to happen. It's not going to be an easy fight, and Kella take out the Fire Beavers. Yet another team near the bottom of the leaderboard that has taken out the Fire Beavers once more, as these late rotates are starting to bite them finally in match day number 7.
Yo, you say that so politely, but if I'm 9 Impulse there and I'm just trying to get my teammates' banners back and that map room scan comes in and I know there's a Seer on that team, I am screaming. Like, it's fine. It's fine.
It's a really tough situation to deal with, and I think that going into that, you know, the survey beacon's right there. There's a good probability that it's happening, and honestly, good play from Kella as well. Fire Beavers do like to play with, I hesitate to call it disrespect, but certainly a little bit of ego as they try and find situations where other teams aren't performing optimally, where other teams aren't prepared. In that situation, Kella absolutely are, because people are dialing it in as we approach the end of this season. You're not giving up any space. Aurora haven't given up any strats until now, but this game certainly gives us one. The composition of Wraith, Caustic, and Mad Maggie to be whipped out here.
Look, this is kind of the Aurora of the past that I was really excited to see. Sunset was typically playing a lot of Seer, but now putting him on the Caustic. It's that Legend composition that we saw being broke out in Split 1 and a little bit here in Split 2, and the building that they're playing for right now is really beneficial for them. I like it a lot. It gives them a little bit of an edge into that next zone, but unfortunately, no Valks are allowed to survive on any kind of repositionings. Like, you should know that by now. It's Valk ultimates are so highly punished, and then when you're having a Seer on an enemy comp, when you go to hit that res, that immediate cancellation, and heroes are looking highly aggressive. And Loopy said, hey, if people are looking to avoid relegation, nice freaking sentinel shot, bro. What is heroes on today?
Babylon's just playing differently right there, finding the knock out of the sky, then the knock on the ground, but it's got to be a quick reset for them. With the Digis inside the smoke, heroes buy themselves a little bit of time. You combo that with the Seer ult, and their reset goes off without a hitch, as Aurora perhaps have found themselves one. Unfortunately, short wall around the outside means that you got to take a moment as Passion to evaluate this, and if I see Caustic Maggie, I tell you what, I'm not pushing.
No, dude, there's no way I want to push inside that building with a Caustic. You know they're utilizing those Nox gas traps to effect. They've already burned through their Dark Veil, expended a lot of the resources, and they had taken a primarily large source of damage there. And so very, very tough, but you can see that Aurora has already repositioned themselves into like kind of crescent moon style area, and you're just having to duck behind boxes, supply bins. It's relatively in the open, but yes, it's in the zone. And now Passion is going to have to push out of that building to get to where Aurora is. And you know, Sunset is going to have to do his best anchoring with those barrels to prevent people from being able to walk up, whether you're nestling them by the trucks, which you can see doing well sourcing that. And if Ranches can utilize the Nemesis there to lay down a lot of damage on Passion before rotating, and this should be an easy cleanup for them, which is something that we need from Aurora. We know they can fight, and honestly, go check out that YouTube content that Aurora is putting out. It was like 120 seconds with Ranches. I learned a lot about him. Man doesn't like spiders or snakes, but I will tell you, if he had an ability to choose between flying or shooting webs out of his hand, he would pick the shooting webs. And as someone named Spider Tiff right now, I like it.
Yeah, it's looking good, whether it be their positioning or their choice of superpower. I'm surprised at the fact that he would have chosen to shoot web, despite the fact that he doesn't like spiders.
That's what I thought too. Immediately I was like, huh, man, I don't know if Ranches and I could be friends. But then as soon as he said the web slinging, I was like, that's it. But Passion coming in. They're making a full-on push, but Mad Maggie Ball gonna stun Amaz. This is what Aurora needs, but they have the upper hand in this fight. Cleave goes down, Sunset goes down. So now we look towards Ranches to make the living here for Aurora.
So many ults attempted to be used as this zoning ability, whether it be the Caustic ult, even the barrels, even the Mad Maggie Ball. Everything was expended there to try and keep Aurora safe. And even now, Passion try and put up a little bit of a zoning wall with this Catalyst. We'll see how well it works for them as they are pulling up the res in cover. Hackis comes around the corner though, and Alliance are here to fry. Passion go down.
Hackis, my man. What? You're a demon. Like, we all know Effect is phenomenal, but the trio, and we're sticking to the Newcastle here. Hackis firmly believes something. I would love to be hearing his reasoning behind the implementation of this, because every time that they play what is comfortable for them in terms of Legend composition, they find a way to utilize it, right? Yuki broke out the Rampart. They used it so incredibly well. Hackis on the Ashe, and it's kind of like, don't knock it until you try it, because just because it might not work for your team doesn't mean that Alliance can't make it happen. Meanwhile, we got exhibits going out like crazy, and Bitfix is about to get into a scuffle. Kella Gaming falls off screen. 12 squads remaining.
Bitfix don't have Digis for this fight, so they're pushing into their own smoke, but it's a tough fight to take. It's a nice use of the Horizon ultimate around the outside, causing some disruption on the innards, as Bitfix, again, forced to disengage due to a stick onto Trix. They're having a real difficult time pushing this, and I don't know if it's worth it anymore, Tiff, because other squads are starting to take note.
Look, if you're just here to make noise, there's a certain point where you have to realize this is not a good fight. We need to prioritize our life, prioritize zone. We've made so much noise here, and we're going into straight open space. The Seer cancel comes in, that heal is going to be, and now all of these Arc Stars are going to be inundating them. So this is tough. Now that you've completely wasted your time by trying to take that fight, look at Heroes, who have been a complete aggressive force here today, are looking to put themselves in an open advantage.
It's another situation much like Vortex from last game as well, where they recognize that controlling this open space is going to work really well for them. There aren't a lot of teams that should be rotating around the southern edge, and instead, Heroes get to play Gatekeeper. They have just 2 teams in front of them coming from Countdown that have to go past them in order to access the next zone that is continuing to pull us out into the west of Trials.
Yeah, this is kind of a disgusting zone. You think of where E6 was in particular inside the tower. That's actually out of zone at this point. So they're going to have to find their way into Trials. And you think of who was north. Phoenix Legacy was kind of holding the buildings north of Trial on the outskirts of the mountains. So they would be able to gatekeep should E6 decide to rotate around the back end to maybe hit the side that J-Lings has been occupying since the pretty much start of this entire game when they were engaging with V2 inside. So, and you know J-Lings with the Wattson, they are going to be just living inside, making it everyone's worst nightmare to kind of penetrate inside the zone.
Pioneers, another early rotator into the zone, and let's not forget E6 that set themselves up on that high ground. For the meantime, it'll be Bitfix Gaming trying to make their own rotation in. They've chosen to bypass taking on Heroes, but haven't found themselves an easier fight.
This is tough. I feel like Alliance has just been a space outside of zone here, denying rotation. And as soon as Bitfix leaves a really precarious situation, moving straight into another one, already got his wall out. He's like, ha, you activated my trap card. And now they have to contest with the powerhouse, your season 2 kill leader affecting Co. This is dynamic, but it's what Alliance needed.
Playing things slowly right now, just controlling their angles. Alliance, remember, have the Newcastle for the defensive utility, but Yuki's got to back up. He's being wide swung on. It's a nice fry from him, but a quick reload on the R99 isn't enough, and it's a 2v1 in the favor of Bitfix Gaming, one that they will eventually win. Alliance expire in the zone. Bitfix leave cracked for dead and move on.
I mean, you have to move with the ring at your back. You have to just say, hey, I don't know if we're going to be able to get that res off. So now we're playing our life here for 2. But we were talking pre-broadcast, like, what would that new third look like on Bitfix? This is the first time we're actually getting to see them here on an ALGS match day. And that was to form. That looked impressive. You're not going up against, you know, someone that's made it to a plethora of lands, that has so much experience. Like, that fight was solid.
Phoenix Legacy going down. We're starting to whittle away at squads that have been here since the beginning. E6, KCP, J-Lings, however, still around, still waiting for their positioning to truly pay off. And it has to an extent. Placement points have started to roll in, but it isn't enough for squads that are at the top of their game like this. E6 slowly approaching from the north and absolutely in danger, as eventually J-Lings will have to come face to face with them.
Yeah, J-Lings is going to have to play for that door where we kind of see Nags' name by. We know KCP is up on top, right? So at any point in time, and I mean, Nasky with a Kraber, 7 bullets, and he's going to be looking down at the rest of the team because they don't necessarily have to jump down. Oh, do it. Come on, Nasky. Do it to him now. Just peek your little head. That's exactly what he's thinking. Like, come on, just peek. Okay. And it's okay because he's got 6 more bullets to make this happen. We can go again. GG, go next. Let's hit this next one.
And the nice thing about where Nasky is positioned right now is that there aren't really sight lines from the low ground onto this. Pioneers are fully aware that they only have to take a 3v3 with a Kraber and R99. That's absolutely doable. Pioneers just have to hold on to their position defensively and hopefully not lose Nasky to a drop down. That's the only thing that could really change their game for the worse.
There's nothing worse than when you're playing high ground and you just accidentally fall off and you're like, well, you know, I wasn't really planning on doing that. We've seen that happen time and time again, but this one connects for Naskia. Nice 140. And he's going to be able to sit here and get any off chance that they push a little too far away from that rock. But it's going to be Vortex making that push on the low ground. They are able to grab a knock onto Nags, and this is turning into a fight where they have the advantage because you've already got kind of that entry fragger from Jaylings down. But if you let this go too long, oh, just like that, E6 is able to clean up. Jaylings is down, 4 squads remaining.
This was always the problem. Jaylings had to feed into E6. KCP pushed Vortex down onto the low ground, but now Vortex find themselves in a similar situation. They're sandwiched between E6 and Eternal, and you have to imagine they're not making it out alive. Before we see that final ring close, I want to hear what it's like from the perspective of E6, so let's jump into a listen in with them.
The team on the left might pick us with DG and Bang. How much kill we have? I have 1.
I have 1.
Yeah, we've only got 2.
It's fine, it's good. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
We win this easy.
Yes, sir.
Good scan. Scan the team on the left more than the right team. The team on top have to drop. They might all in us.
Yeah.
Don't give entry to them.
They're shooting at the bottom team, the team on top. Yeah.
I'm going to scan the guys inside.
This is really close to the end zone as well. If we can take control of that later on, we take it, okay?
If they play that, the team on top is going to, like, do something on them for sure.
The team on top have to drop anyway.
Yeah.
I'm trying to scan to see when they're going to drop. 1 team walled. There's 0 in. 2 teams 0. I think the team up top just dropped.
Yeah. Can you look down from them?
Yeah, I'm holding.
But if I flash in 1...
0 in on you, Sonny. Also,
on the right here.
The team's coming out now. They're playing the rock.
Round the back. We're fine.
Play this rock on me. We're good. There's still 1 inside.
I'm going down.
Okay, I nearly cracked the guy inside.
Yeah, you're good, Kenda. That's perfect spot. You're good.
Yeah, I know.
To the right, Kenda. You might have kept him.
I got the guy spot.
Last
It's the last 2 squads.
But they have a knock on the right. Can we clean that?
Push.
Yeah.
See a clutch.
One.
I'm not on the right. Get in.
What one's that? Nice stoppage.
Well, that was absolutely impressive there by E6. A lot of questions. I immediately knew. I remember they had a new third coming in today. Not only a new third here, but a new analyst as well. And we were curious, how would that work for them? They get the gift of a zone. They handle it exponentially well. And the comm sounded good. So let's go ahead and talk with Kin D4, right? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, because anytime you put numbers and letters and like abbreviations, 17-year-old from Spain, brand new member of E6, Dia.
And they put a lot of trust in him. I, by the way, Tiff, have been going with kinda for a while. So that's what I'm laying out here. And I think that E6 really demonstrated a lot of nice gelling in their off time. You talked about the new third and new analyst as well. Clearly have been crushing it because they put him on Valkyrie, they let him take the off angle, and E6 played that end zone expertly. There are a lot of situations where you can mess this up, where you can run in, take that fight too quickly, and lose to Vortex coming out of Trials, and yet they sit back and manage. I didn't even feel like E6 were the focus at any point.
No, and like we had kind of talked about them, they immediately took occupancy up in that tower. We saw Phoenix Legacy go down, and essentially E6 had extended a little bit up and had made sure that Phoenix Legacy could not rotate down behind them. So they cleared their backs extremely well and poised themselves to take on that end game. So shout out to Kinda, by the way, for me completely butchering that name. I do that a lot, and I'm always like, how can I hooked on phonics this name when there's a number in it? And Zephyr's like, bro, it's Kinda, just please. And I was like, I got you. So I apologize. That's on me. Let's cue the highlights and see kind of how that showed up from start to finish. I'm excited, right? We knew as soon as we saw that zone, we were like, this is E6. This is everything they need, but not before we had the contest.
Yeah, their positioning looked really good, and for a lot of zones, it's very versatile. If you play the sniper tower just off to the north of Trials, you have access to playing rocks outside of the no-name village to the north, and you also, as we already saw, have a lot of cover if you eventually have to move down south. It was great positioning from them, and KCP J-Lings absolutely had the right read as well. We got a lot of really big brain plays coming in at the end zone. And of course, we had the typical shenanigans on the rotations, and it wasn't just Fire Beavers that went down. So many squads bit the dust, with Heroes even falling as they tried to gatekeep towards the south.
Yeah, just think about this positioning. We later saw Passion occupy it, then Alliance comes in, and then Bitfix rotates out and tries to make a play for that positioning as well, because you think about owning that southern side of it, maintaining this and being able to play forward would actually get you a good chunk of placement points. But this fight by Bitfix, yes, they lose out on Cracked here, but it was impeccable. And then Vortex has to go through and start kind of pushing out J-Lings into the open fray of all of the teams. This is why it is so important to secure your backside and make sure that no one is pushing behind you. And even with a Watson and all of the fences to put in the defensive fray, they were not able to maintain that.
And absolutely an understandable position from the J-Lings squad. They tunnel visioned hard on the fact that E6 was the team to look out for, forgetting entirely that a team could still drop on them from behind. It's a mistake that every one of us has made, that I make constantly, but it's a mistake nonetheless that opens up their backs and gives Vortex a second place finish at the day.
Ooh, I mean, that's a very nice performance there with 18 points, but not to outshine there. Element 6, 12 placement points, 4 eliminations. One of my favorite parts of the listen, and it was like, how many KP do you have? And you just hear kind of go, I have 1. And I'm just like, yes, kinda. You're doing it. I'm so proud of you here in the ALGS. But Pioneers, well played from the top. Nasky with the Kraber grabbing some good points. Heroes, that aggression that we saw early on, netted them 3 KP for a total of 4. Passion doing incredibly well, but it was Fire Beavers and Aurora that kind of, I feel like, had a game cut short for them. Like, it could have been dominating, and that's just been kind of the mantra of FB today. They're just not having one of their best performances to boot, and that's okay, right? Can't win them all. You can't be perfect.
It's got to happen, and I'm sure that we're going to load into game 5 or 6. Somebody's going to get a Kraber, and we're going to be singing Fire Beavers' praises as if none of this happened. Because right now, sitting at 15 points, they still, with a win, can continue to jump up. So, Fire Beavers fans, fear not, for you still have time. For squads like Aurora, however, I do have a few more questions. Because they're continually shifting their comp, because they're continually shifting their roster in an attempt to find success, now that we've entered week 7, or rather match day 7 of the ALGS, they've whipped out the Caustic Mad Maggie Wraith and fell still early on. What is the possible answer for Aurora is the question that everyone has to be asking.
There's a lot of people that are asking questions about Aurora, and we have yet to see an answer be given from Aurora themselves. So we're just kind of all waiting on pins and needles to see when will it click. It's not, they're so talented, every individual player, and it's tough, right? Split 2 has been pretty tough to a lot of the top performing teams in Split. But cut to a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna have batch number 5 for you.
WD Black, the official storage partner of the Apex Legends Global Series. And now here's where you guys want.
Monster Energy, the official energy drink of the Apex Legends Global Series.
Welcome back to Match Day 7, folks. We are about to jump into game number 5. Zephyr, a hearty welcome back to you as well. I missed you during the last game, but now we get the chance to cover some World's Edge action together. What did you think of last game?
Oh man, I first of all, you know for a fact that anything towards that Northwest is my favorite zone when it comes to World's Edge there. But the absolute structure of how E6 played that out is about as good as it gets regarding cerebral and effective decision making.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the way that they navigated that, and we had a lot of teams having different takes coming into it as well. We so often focus on squads coming from the north, coming from Trials, and KCP had a decent attempt at dismounting Trials as well, which does fell a lot of teams and did ultimately take them down.
Yeah, I think from them, it was a guarantee right from the get-go, but it's the effective nature of a team who knows they're in a winning position to play that out from that moment forward. You are gifted success. You better deliver.
You get to sit up there, beautiful Catalyst wall on the way down, claimed a lot of lives on the way in. Bitfix and Heroes both approaching from the south make it so difficult to actually play around those positions in World's Edge, but I do like the very different positions that we can get, as that is one of the more unique zones when we pull out into the open. More typically on World's Edge, there are at least some buildings in the end game that you can make use of, and perhaps that's a situation where a team like Aurora, who again, Caustic, Maggie, may be able to find more success. So let's find out, because match number 5 is coming up now.
Once again, these teams, some of the last opportunities that they have here in today's match day, but it isn't the end of B versus C. This is only technically the second time that they've met. So if they don't come out on top of this one, they have another chance to do so again, I believe, on our next match day.
Still a lot of opportunity for these squads. And remember, they're getting used to each other once again. We've got another contest going on at staging. So this continued adaptation going to be a work in progress as, again, Maestro risk their game to try and claim their POI.
Maestro, obviously, you can already tell potentially having that height and may be effective. I always do worry about staging, especially with Aurora so nearby. Granted, the current structure of the resources do not look healthy and potentially don't bode well, but they are pushing them back. That is impressive.
I was going to say, what are you talking about? You're not a Mozam gamer? I've been really enjoying it recently, but I'll be with triple whites and height. It still seems like on the low ground, the call is to disengage. Maestro effectively win themselves half a POI, a little bit of extra loot, just by sticking to their guns and having taken out 0-0. Passion are unfortunately forced to disengage into landslide.
So we obviously did miss that light section there, but now's my question. Where's Phoenix Legacy? This is the team that comes through, and it is still well within their rotational period. You have to wonder where they potentially ended up if they're already gone. Maybe they rotate even faster than I have imagined. Currently at technically the lowest or fastest looting team, but oh, look at that.
They have indeed rotated fast.
It separated Imp, though. He is down. He had to take the other choke because Passion came in there. Now, granted, it's so early that it really doesn't matter, but they are forced on a slight delay as we do start to discuss this northeastern zone. So many of our teams already making their way forward. Vortex, more than happy to have this one gifted, but you can already see Jaylings so quick with it.
Yeah, I'm really appreciating how they play right now, because showing up again early to a zone that does favor people who are able to take northern positions is really beneficial. And with where Jaylings are sat right now, they even have options if this ring starts to pull a little further south to play the rocks outside of Overlook. It's a good position from them. Bitfix, however, up on height, have a great position of their own as they start to take a fight, remembering, of course, that third parties could very well be in the area.
We can obviously see KCP well within that distance there, but I'll tell you what, Passion just can't catch a break. Once again, down to their last remaining member here. It doesn't seem like Bitfix have the tracking underway, and it might be All Skyhook here forward for Passion, but they do catch the tail end of some damage there, and it's likely going to be the continued assault.
Yeah, Bitfix can actually chase this for the rotation in. Depends what choke they want to try and take. Skyhook completely empty at the moment of most teams who should have rotated in. And Bitfix have the option to choose between a rotation through Skyhook, one that takes them up to the north, or through the choke points by Sniper Tower leading into Fragment. It appears that their rotation is going to take them more directly towards the Grandma's house area and perhaps the survey beacon that lies there, while E6 start to make a push of their own, heading out again towards the north, towards this zone that, as we believe, should be favoring teams that do hold the more northern positions.
I directly look towards where Gaimin Gladiators are right now, or my apologies. No, I said that right. Gaimin Gladiators. I'm tricking myself. I get used to my other pronunciation. Either way, a strong, solid position for them, J-Lings, and even Eternal. I would predict this one to be more of an eastern pull there, or potentially up towards that kind of hillside that comes away for Climatizer. But you still got to count the POI in, right? It is still such an effective place to play for your early game, even if it is very likely that, especially this side of it, will no longer be available when we do start to discuss Zone 4 further.
Cyril means that Phoenix Legacy and E6 will largely leave each other alone now. It's a tenuous position to coexist from, but one that Phoenix Legacy can manage and hopefully farm for a little bit of damage. That's really their biggest concern at the moment, is making sure that they are not walking into zones 3 and beyond with white shields. As much as you can get done with the Rampage, even the R99 at close distances like this, to give yourself the extra 25 HP bump, the better, because it's going to count for a lot later in the game.
Now, KCP, we talked about them coming out of that countdown area. They decided not to third party and instead take this fight. That building we already know taken out and away by, I believe, Gaimin Gladiators here. For them, it's going to be the bridge instead. Still, not a bad position whatsoever here. It is very difficult to hold all of the angles that exist in this current spot, but it still allows you to kind of transfer down that hillside into where we think that zone is pulling, much better than, say, having to compete outside of Climatizer.
Yeah, and you do have to really time this properly as well. This is so often what we've coined as the bridge of death when teams land here, so I appreciate that Pioneers are already scouting out alternate positions that they can take, perhaps even sieging on this Macaroni building before other teams do start to arrive. They get a good shield break early on, but KCP are going to play things slow and steady, not wanting to overextend, with Gaimin Gladiators shooting them in the back.
Now, likely, it is still incredibly early here, and so this position probably going to be relatively safe, at least for the next 2 to 3 minutes, but it's epicenter in that building that do pose issues, and as a result, Pioneers are moving. They want nothing to do with it. They see they've got space available. They see they have access points here in Climatizer, and decide to take it out and away. We'll have to see, especially in the late game, if this zone does pull outward from this POI. Will this have been that kind of, well, game-breaking decision that holds them back?
Could have been, and that's the risk that you always run when you're taking rotations like this. E6, Phoenix Legacy still poking at each other. Phoenix Legacy, unfortunately, not having been able to pull out the Evos just yet. E6 are making positive trades every time, not giving an inch up against PXL, who unfortunately are just hemorrhaging resources. Thank God they have the Watson up on the high ground to at least be able to give them some semblance of safety. Another double seer ult means that, again, these teams won't be pushing each other again. We're at a standstill, Zephyr, and everybody, especially in Climatizer, is just holding their breath right now.
Well, I'll tell you who's holding their breath, trying to stay as quiet as can be. A maze from Passion picked off in Bitfix. They did actually opt to fall through from Skyhook, albeit it didn't quite look like that the last time we saw them. That's going to be your first team eliminated here at the hands of not only Bitfix, but of course Maestro from early on in this game. Happy to now have that KP confirmed.
Surprising to see the way that it's played out until now, and Bitfix do give up a lot of their rotational time, opting to play Edge as a result. They're going to be coming out of Skyhook a lot later than everyone else in the lobby, and again, making their way up north in a similar fashion. very, very late. As a result, we're starting to craft up already. Get yourself in the best position. And for right now, Mozambique's actually looking pretty good should you choose to pick it up, because hammer points, I am a big fan of.
It takes that weapon from what you assume is a short-range addition to, I mean, more of an oppressive take in terms of the mid. Now, I don't think anyone's going to be dropping any one of these kinds of weaponry to pick that one up, at least this late into the game. But I do love to talk about it when we get the chance, especially in the early game. If you can adjust to the projectile speed and take advantage of that tighter spread, it can be such a good tool. And it's actually something that we did get to see. We didn't get to really see, but Maestro, they had it in their hands as they took that against 0-0.
Yeah, it would be cool if we get to an end game and see that play out. However, what we're seeing play out right now is a push from Alliance, and it's right onto KCP. Remember the importance of these Seer ults, something that KCP have not elected to use yet. Neither team really, as everybody holds on to these resources. The Pioneers do evidently have a little bit of safety to work with, despite the open sight lines just off to the north, because Alliance have opted into the low ground with Newcastle. This is a great move, Zephyr.
I think it is something that is going to last at least for the next 2 zones, but it does always worry me. We talk about this specific area and the sightlines that come through from that bridge and from Game and Gladiators. Right now, it's not a problem, because I don't even think someone's playing those spots, but especially as some of our late rotating teams come on in, our zone clearly caters more towards this eastern side. That's when you do have to start taking a little bit of worry. Now, granted, Castle Wall, it can block quite a bit of damage, but if you are full sent on a complete assault, I mean, you're stuck in a hole.
That's absolutely true, and I do wonder whether teams will choose to jump in onto Alliance. If anyone does try late Valk ult there, they've got the extra bit of cover, but it ain't exactly the best position to play in the first place. In the meanwhile, however, Heroes, they've encountered a little bit of trouble trying to make their own edge rotation. It's not particularly a super late one style of play that they're going for. However, it is one that will be denied nonetheless by Kella, who have actually been playing very, very well today.
A fantastic response, especially when we talk about, where they currently reside in EMEA as a whole. Typically, I mean, literally at the very bottom in 30. Today's points alone will surpass everything they've been able to put up. Meanwhile, though, Fire Beavers are late rotators. Heroes, as they pull back, run right into their mitts here. They are going to lose out on 1 for now, but I think they have the time to revive. I doubt Kella's making this move forward.
Yeah, you gotta hope that nobody else pushes out onto you, as right now Lane and damage with the flatline. Oirein just makes sure that Joker can get back into the game. You want to stay strong as 3 members, and they're going for it right now. Oirein with the push inside the Mechanical Beast. He is felled. Babylon takes him down, and now you've got to pick up Oirein once again before the third party comes in.
Now, with the shots concluding here, the sounds that be, no one else exists. It is prime loot here, and it makes me question, Kella, obviously, clearly more interested in playing this one out from the height, catering towards that next pull, getting to some of those rocky exposures on that northern side. But it could have been a clearing of your backside.
Very surprising to see the way that plays out, and the fact that Fire Beavers again just dip themselves right back into the zone as well. A scan available for them to find out where everyone is. That's what Oirein's going for right now, and Fire Beavers are about to get a lot of information very quickly with still a minute left to rotate into the zone.
And this is the fascinating thing about this time, especially when we do take a look at their average split rotations. It's right around here, zone 2 to 3, where they have this extra information. They take their time, they get a controlling scan, and then out of nowhere, the acceleration to a position that is far more dominant, especially into zone 4, it always comes through for the Fire Beavers. I know they spend their time, I know it's late, but all that